Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we are meeting on today. We pay our respects to their elders both past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. So we're meeting again in a hybrid style for the first time in ages, with councillors and some officers meeting in the Town Hall under strict conditions. Remaining officers and members of the community will continue to participate virtually via the WebEx platform until we can safely welcome everyone back to the Town Hall in person. So the meeting is being streamed via Council's webcast page and Facebook Live. Just a reminder, streams and recordings of council meetings are copyrighted and cannot be altered, reproduced or republished without the permission of council. If we experience any technical difficulties this evening, we will adjourn the meeting for a short time to resolve the issue, and councillors, we will have to, when not speaking, wear our masks during this time. Obviously, we'll come back if we have any technical difficulties and adjourn for a longer time if we need to. I do remind attendees that any member of the public addressing council must extend due courtesy and respect to council and the processes under which it operates, and must take directions from the chair whenever called on to do so. Speakers must remain respectful, and statements or questions must not be defamatory, offensive or objectionable, aimed at embarrassing a councillor or member of staff, or relate to a matter outside the powers of council. So let's get started. Item number 1 on tonight's agenda is apologies, and as I look around the room, there are none. Number 2 on the agenda is minutes of previous meetings. So, councillors, the minutes of the meeting of the 20th of October 2021 have been circulated. Are there any questions regarding these minutes? If not, can I have a motion to confirm these minutes? Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Martin to move, Councillor Consolo to second. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Oh, and it's not under division. That's carried unanimously. Number 3 tonight is declarations of conflicts of interest. And does anyone have a conflict of interest in a matter being discussed at tonight's meeting? CEO.
May I have a material conflict of interest in confidential report 17.2? At that time the council considers that item, I'll leave the meeting and ask Claire Stevens, our Executive Manager, People, Culture and Safety, to assume my chair. Thank
you. I also have a general conflict of interest in Part 3.1 of the recommendation for Report 12.1, which is the Cultural Development Fund, the CDF Projects Grant 2021-22. So as I have an association with the recommended grant recipients, I will remove myself from the chamber for that part of the item. The Deputy Mayor will chair and I will return once resolved. Okay, let's move to item number 4, which is public question time and submissions. And as per usual, we'll now hear all the public questions and public comment on the report items at once. All requests to speak were required to be submitted by 4 p.m. this afternoon. Submitters were given the option to attend the meeting in person or join the, not meeting in person, to join the WebEx meeting virtually or have their statement read out, a summarised version by officers. So let me move to that list. So the first person to speak, I call on James Woollett, submitting a question to Council. Hi, James.
Good evening. My name is James Woollett. I live in Middle Park and I represent the members of the Middle Park Library Action Group. Just comments from people.
Sorry, please continue. Sorry.
About the quality and cheerfulness of the new staff who've been working under difficult circumstances at Middle Park Library. Nevertheless, this week the residents of Glenara, Darebin, Yarra, Stonington, Maribyrnong and many other Victorian municipalities are enjoying all the facilities their public libraries have to offer. Yet the City of Port Phillip has only managed to fully open one library in St Kilda for just 4 hours a day. Why is this so? Is it because of shortage of staff caused by the large numbers of retrenchments and resignations from the library service over the last 18 months? Is it because staff are reluctant to implement the state government's COVID vaccination passport policy? If the council executives in so many other municipalities can fully open all their libraries, Why can't the executives in St Kilda Town Hall do the same? When will the residents of Port Melbourne, South Melbourne, Albert Park, and especially Middle Park be welcome, as your website says, to browse and borrow our collections, use our computers, print, and enjoy the library space once more? Thank you.
Thank you, James. I will go to Tony Keenan to respond.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mayor. The library is staging the openings and we are dealing with some vacancies due to a decision not to replace staff during lockdown to deal with the budgetary hit that we were experiencing. We have commenced recruitment, and so it's correct that part of the rolling out of the reopening is because of staff shortage, but I just want to clarify there have been no retrenchments at the library. I'm not sure where that information came from. There have been some resignations, and as I just advised, because of the budgetary situation, we didn't recruit those vacancies until 3 weeks ago. All libraries are continuing to be open for click and collect, so there is services at all libraries. We haven't had any issues from residents about not being able to obtain any items. And the St Kilda Library is reopened, and next week we'll be progressively opening the rest of the services as we recruit staff accordingly.
Thank you. Councillors, I just need to remind you, under COVID restrictions, we do need to wear our masks when not speaking into the microphone, please. I believe a former councillor, David Brand, might be on the line, and you've got a question for council.
I do, thank you very much.
David, if you could state your name and suburb and then please speak.
My name is David Brand. I come from St Kilda. And I am speaking on, I want to ask a question about, or a couple of questions about 63 to 73 Fitzroy Street, the development site there. And I just want to frame that with a brief paragraph here. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you. 63 to 73 Fitzroy Street is the single most significant development site in the whole of Fitzroy Street. It presents our biggest opportunity to have something built there that will, with the genuine power, to set the future of Fitzroy Street and get it right. But for us, getting it right, playing to our historic and cultural and reputational strengths, depends on social and cultural mixes that are not being delivered by the conventional real estate market right now. Upmarket apartments with a few retail shop fronts may be the safest formula, but it will not get real, sustainable urban life back on the street or a genuine local economy to support it. To achieve this, we all need to work together. The developers and landowners who have the vision, the traders, the community, and particularly council. We all need to send our messages that vision, insight, innovation, and cultural ambition will all be welcomed and supported and rewarded in this city, and that conventional generic development will be a lonely player on this site. In this context, I ask Council what sort of collaborations and encouragements actually are available to any prospective owners of this property, which is coming on sale now, who may be considering it with a deeper vision or broader ambition. These are my questions. What roles can Council play in encouraging any future project on this site that will build on Fitzroy Street's historical, cultural strengths to regenerate the street's next successful cultural phase? Second question. Looking ahead to possible leasehold partnerships involving Council's Jackson Street car park property, what sorts of social and cultural dividends could be sought by Council, and what sorts of advantages and considerations in return might these arrangements offer to a future owner of 63 to 73 Fitzroy Street? And my third question, looking ahead to future thinking on strategic planning for Fitzroy Street, if a future developer of the site were to seek to exceed current planning controls what sort of conditions or undertakings applied to the development proposal might enable council to entertain such a request? Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. I'm going to go to Brian T to respond to that one.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I begin by saying that the activation of Fitzroy Street is a priority for Council, and Council is considering what role it can play to support Fitzroy Street from an activation perspective, from a planning perspective, and as a land owner. Specifically in relation to 63 to 73 Fitzroy Street, we are keen to collaborate with owners, with the developers and with the community, and we would encourage any owner or prospective developer to meet with Council early as part of the pre-approvals process to see how we can work together to ensure that the development activates and plays a role in the rejuvenation of Fitzroy Street. The council-owned car park is another opportunity for to support the rejuvenation of Fitzroy Street. Council is undertaking consultation on the intention to lease the Jackson Street car park. I would encourage the community to engage via the Council Have Your Say webpage in terms of that proposal. And the council proposal is for a long-term lease of the site while retaining council ownership, and council is also keen to ensure that car parking remains as part of any development. But crucially, the core reason for the proposed lease of the car park is the potential for any development to contribute to and stimulate renewal of the Fitzroy Street area. Council's agenda is to promote innovation and creative solutions that make a contribution to enlivening the area. Should Council proceed with the lease, we would also welcome interest from owners of neighbouring sites, including the Easy Stay site. In terms of the question about Council's response to a request to exceed current planning controls at Jackson Street, any successful bidder would be able to approach Council to seek a planning scheme amendment, and in considering such an amendment, Council would consider the request from the perspective of community benefits and Council's core desire to promote economic and social outcomes along Fitzroy Street. Any amendment would, of course, be subject to the standard processes, which includes public consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. I was remiss, I think it's being back in the room. I did mean to say that I am going to limit any all public speakers to 2 minutes tonight because we have a very long list. So for anyone listening at home or preparing to get on in a moment, I'm sorry, Rhonda, that you will be the next person. I am going to limit you to 2 minutes. So please be succinct in your comments just so that we can get through everyone's submissions or questions in a timely manner. So Rhonda Small, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Actually, can I just ask, can we just turn down that speaker just slightly so it's not quite as overwhelming? Okay, Rhonda, if you could state your name and suburb, and then you've got 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. My name's Rhonda Small and I live in St Kilda. As we've just heard, 63 to 73 Fitzroy Street has come onto the market. This site, with 8 shop fronts in the middle of Fitzroy Street, is at the heart of the street, but currently it is also symbolic of its decline. Half the shops are vacant, only half the motel-style studio apartments on the 2 floors above are leased, and the current development permit, first issued in 2016 but not enacted, is anything but transformational, with 54 residential apartments over 5 levels planned for the rear of the site, undergrounding the existing open-air car park. But what an opportunity the sale of this site represents for our community, and what an opportunity for Council to have a say in its development. One can imagine many creative outcomes that could enliven this central part of Fitzroy Street. A mixed-use development could emerge, perhaps with affordable housing for key workers, musicians, artists, all of whom are being squeezed out of St Kilda. On the ground floor, artist studios, an arcade for local arts and crafts, a gallery and shops serving the needs of locals, a deli, a fruit shop, perhaps a book cafe. Or why not an Indigenous cultural space along the lines recently announced by the City of Melbourne and developed in partnership with local members of the Yalukit-Willam clan? An imaginative development that transforms the site architecturally and envisions residential, cultural and commercial spaces that would attract both locals and visitors is what could really make a difference to this section of Fitzroy Street. What it doesn't need is more of the same, not more short stay accommodation or apartments only the wealthy can afford. And how can that be prevented? Well, Council could play an important role here. It already owns the Jackson Street car park behind the site, a car park that, as we've just heard, is Council's currently contemplating ground leasing to enable a development to contribute to the revitalisation of Fitzroy Street. The fact that 63 to 73 Fitzroy Street abuts the council car park screams out for an integrated solution involving both sites. To date, leaving developments...
Rhonda, you'll have to come to your questions as you've hit the 2-minute mark, please.
The questions then. What role can council play to achieve the best possible community, cultural and commercial outcome for 63 to 73 Fitzroy Street? Is the CEO exploring the possibility of council purchasing the site or exercising all regulatory mechanisms at its disposal to influence the outcome there? And has there been any discussion with the local member for Albert State Government to purchase the site to leverage appropriate development there? Thanks very much.
Thank you. Brian T.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the question. As stated in my previous answer, this site and the Jackson Street car park represents a great opportunity to deliver community benefits, including outcomes that can help revitalise Fitzroy Street. In terms of the role that Council can play, Council is very active working with traders in Fitzroy Street, and we would be keen to work with any new owners to see how we could support local businesses. We'd also welcome any discussion with any proposed developers on how any proposed development could support and encourage community, cultural and commercial outcomes as part of any development. In terms of the advocacy and engagement with the state government, the Fitzroy Street, as I said, is a priority for Council and is regularly part of the Council advocacy agenda with the state government.
Thank you. I call upon Bill Garner submitting a question to Council. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Mayor. Thank you. Bill Garner from Kilda. Continuing on, the sale of the motel in Fitzroy Street offers a rare opportunity to a city that proudly badges itself as creative and prosperous. But what is a creative city if that idea is to be more than a piece of creative branding? I suggest it goes far beyond supporting the arts and the creative industries. Rather, it implies that Council will, as core business, pursue creativity in every aspect of the city's life, which prompts the question, what is the link between a creative city and a prosperous city? Well, in one direction it's clear. Every artist or group that applies for cultural funding is required to show how the planned activity will support local business and visitation. But where's the reciprocal responsibility? That every commercial enterprise should be required to demonstrate how it enhances the culture of the city. It doesn't exist. But if we were the creative city we like to think ourselves, everyone would understand that this was part of the deal for operating in Port Phillip. The only example I can find is an encouragement for developers to commission a work of art for their building. Well, that's all and fine, but it would be far better if it were the building itself that were the work of art. We all know that this is far from being the case. But the Pride Centre shows that Port Phillip can do it. A benchmark has been set. Now we have to keep doing it. Which brings us back to the motel in Fitzroy Street. Council must make it clear that it is expecting something architecturally, socially and culturally brilliant for the site. My question is, what is the creative city doing to generate that expectation? Thank you.
Thank you. I now call upon Elizabeth Morrison speaking to item 10.1, the Domestic Animal Management Plan for 2022 to 2025. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If you could state your name and suburb, and then you've got just 2 minutes to speak.
Great, thank you. Elizabeth Morrison, Port Melbourne. Animals in the natural environment are important contributions to mental health and well-being. The challenge is to provide for those who want to enjoy the environment with their pets and those who want to enjoy the environment without interacting with other people's pets. The recent DAMP survey has documented evidence of efforts to engage residents, but unfortunately the survey participants were over 85% pet owners. Less than 10% of residents own pets. Further, the concerns of those who wanted more dog prohibited or on-leash space and were dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with the balance of public space use and dog restrictions, 291 people were not recorded. Consequently, there were no actions proposed for this group for feedback in round 2. However, in relation to the petition, it's been heartening to see reference to possible on-leash beach access provisions. Also, fenced-off areas for dogs are positive. They enable dogs to exercise and let others enjoy undisturbed picnics and passive recreation. Reporting is another DAMP consideration. There are many problems with interactions with pets and non-compliance that are underreported. Reporting is focusing on the negative. Residents want to enjoy the beauty of our area and benefit from being in the natural environment, not take another photo for snap, send, solve. In over 10 years, there have been very few days, if any, when I've not seen dogs off-leash in the foreshore. At present, Port Phillip provides generous off-leash space. Less than 10% are pet owners, but off-leash areas are far more than 10%. 90% dog prohibited or on-leash areas would not be popular, but would be proportional. Nearly finished? However, pet owners continue to ask for more off-space, and DAMP continues to promote increases in off-leash and fenced areas.
Elizabeth, you'll have to come to the end. If you could just finish your sentence, please.
I hope we can come to a better balance in the future and that compliance can be increased. I was going to thank the animal management team and talk about respect, fairness and kindness to help us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call upon Patricia Goldie, also speaking to item 10.1, which is the Domestic Animal Management Plan. Hi, Patricia.
Thank you, Mayor.
Patricia.
My name is Patricia Goldie. Oh, sorry.
Yes. Oh, no, please continue. You've just got your 2 minutes. I might just ask the sound to turn it up a little bit. Now, please continue.
Can we start going? Okay. My name is Patricia Goldie. I live in Port Melbourne. As a dog and cat owner for 2 decades, I completely agree that the hard work from the department that assists the animal management people, that assists councillors for many actions that contribute to the well-being of the community, such as desexing, registering animals, cat curfew, animal waste. But really there's a limit when it comes to public spaces. And I particularly want to focus on item 3.2 on the agenda, in which council officers assist the community for assisting council to develop actions that will balance the needs of pet owners and non-pet owners. And it's that last bit, the balance. Now, the thing is, I do not believe that actions will be developed that balance my need for safety as a non-dog owner in public spaces. My voice has not been heard in the DAMP process, even though I've completed the questionnaires online. The information arising from the engagement studies and other methods used are highly biased in favour of pet and dog owners. And this is simply because the general population doesn't answer about animals, and this goes into public spaces, and I think that's the problem. When it comes to the issue of the public sharing of public space with dogs, most policies being driven by the DAMP studies, and they're highly biased by the dog owners. but both phase 1 in July and phase 2 in October, around 80% of dog owners replied, and a lot of time is spent in conducting these engagements, but the responses are dominated by the minority of dog owners, and they're 7%, and the voice of the wider majority of the community is not being heard. I've provided details to councillors of the examples in these documents that I believe show this.
Patricia, you'll have to wrap up, please.
Well, I'm just going to say there's very serious injuries are happening on the beaches. That's in the damp. There's also often dogs off-leash are out of control. And I really think that it's vital that councillors develop actions about access to public space that will ensure that there is a balance between the needs of the minority dog owners and the rest of the majority.
Thank you.
The beaches are
Patricia, I'm sorry. We'll have
Thank you.
Yep, sorry, I've just got to try and be fair in the amount of time given. Thank you very much. So I will remind anyone, thank you very much. I will remind everyone 2 minutes is what I'm giving you tonight. So I'm going to call upon Liz and Mick, who are speaking to item 10.1, Domestic Animal Management Plan. Liz and Mick, are you there, and are you speaking individually or shared time?
Shared time. We won't take too long.
Okay,
Thank you for the opportunity.
So if you could state your names and suburb, please.
My name is Liz. I live in Port Melbourne with my husband Mick, who will add a comment when I've finished. We are responsible pet owners. We've been living in Port Phillip for only 2 years, and we're truly appreciative of the generous and abundant opportunities that are available for dogs off-leash. I'm not asking for more off-leash space. I'm just, with regard to the restrictions on the beaches at Port Melbourne, I believe a common sense approach is required. It would be much simpler with regard to education, awareness and enforcement if the access to the beach was the same all year, with restrictions only to the time that the beaches could be accessed between November and March. The mixture currently is confusing. The balance argument makes no sense. If a beach is accessible in winter, how is making it inaccessible all summer balanced? I'll hand over to Mick.
Hi, Mick Arter from Port Melbourne. My point is the existing dog beach at Port Melbourne between Lagoon Pier and the Port Melbourne Sailing Club often has lots of visitors from out of the city who come down Bay Street and sit on the beach. It's quite a narrow stretch of beach, and often they're a bit surprised that there's dogs tearing around, as dogs do. My suggestion is, or request is, could the council swap the dog beach so it's on the other side of the yacht club, Port Melbourne Yacht Club, which is a much wider stretch of sand between the yacht club and Station Pier, similar sort of distance, but it's less utilised by people, and it would be far safer, and it seems to attract less visitors. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you to you both. I call upon Talia Blum, also speaking to item 10.3, which is the petition response request for changes to dog restrictions on Port Melbourne beaches. Hi, Talia.
Hello. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Talia Bloomberg, and I live in Port Melbourne. I live on Beaconsfield Parade, so the beach is actually my front yard, and I'm on it almost daily. No matter the season, the only people on the beach early mornings are dogs and their owners, dog lovers or regular swimmers whom often bring their dogs along as well. No one arrives before 10 a.m. for any other purpose. And I can tell you this not only by who I see on the beach each morning, but also by the parking available outside my own house. The beach is a wonderful outlet for the dogs to run and play and swim in the coolest part of the day, and then be inside after 10 a.m. when it gets too hot. As a past owner of a dog walking business, I'm concerned to hear that the council are considering an on-lead only option. It defeats the true purpose of letting them have a run and a play on the beach. Dogs on lead are often more protective of their owners, which could lead to more incidences, as dogs will be frustrated not to be able to use the beach to release pent-up energy. Lately, the dog off-leash parks have become overrun with so many new dog owners, outdoor training camps, children's sporting clubs such as in Lagoon Oval, and many more people having picnics. The small off-lead beach which we have is often even more overrun than the parks. We have this wonderful stretch of beach at our disposal, and local dog owners are responsible and pick up after their dogs, as can be seen in the dog parks, which are now being happily shared by everyone else. As a dog-oriented community, I hope that the Council will seriously consider the request to keep the beaches off-leash just until 10 o'clock, as it's desperately needed. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Talia. I call upon Helen Taylor this time, speaking to both 10.1, which is the Domestic Animal Management Plan, and 10.3, which is the petition response for the changes to the Port Melbourne beaches for dog restrictions. Hi, Helen.
Hi, good evening, Lord Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name's Helen Taylor. I'm a home owner, a landlord and a dog owner in the City of Port Phillip, specifically Port Melbourne. I'd like to speak to you this evening regarding 10.1, the dam policy, where you are still investigating potential locations for off-lead dog areas, enclosed off-lead dog areas, plus the 10.3. Firstly, dog fence enclosures. As the first speaker did actually mention, it is actually beneficial when it is an enclosed, safe environment. In your draft version 2, you call out Moran Park, which is in Elwood. This is nearly 7 kilometres from Port Melbourne. Port Melbourne residents were the highest engaged residents in this plan. Elwood is approximately 3 kilometres from Brighton, who have a brilliant off-lead gated beach enclosure. I strongly believe it needs to be a section, a beach section in Port Melbourne, and certainly some learnings from Brighton would be awesome. The other key area which I believe Council are investigating is obviously along the tram line for off-lead. Again, this is a fantastic area that we should be able to have some sections that are fenced, providing a safe and enclosed dog area. Dogs, unfortunately, can get distracted no matter how great they are, and it's the worst fear of any dog owner if they run across a road. The benefits of having clear, enclosed, safe, secure dog areas will alleviate a lot of the misunderstanding with others have spoken about this evening, and we see this particularly on beaches. I do not feel safe letting my dog off the beach because there is so much noise. As we can see, the dogs get spooked, the road's so busy, people, cars, motorbikes, bikes. I'm afraid she will get hurt. So that's in regards to the fenced enclosure. In regards to dogs on the beach during certain times, I fully support and believe dogs should be able to access early, prior to 10 and after 7, either on or off lead for me, as long as there is absolute effective control. Also, having beach bars on the beach is, I feel quite strongly about this one, is completely contradictory to council policy of beaches being in a dry zone. And my dog gets very scared with it, with the noise that it creates. And lastly, if when you do finalise your policies, your animal management plan, the current image you're using actually shows a woman on a phone with a dog off-lead walking behind her, and clearly you can see she's not paying attention. So if, we need to actually show and demonstrate the behaviour that we want to see with animal owners. Thank you, and happy to elaborate if required.
Thank you very much. I now call upon Kitty Flanagan, speaking to item 10.3, petition response for requests for changes to dog restrictions on Port Melbourne beaches. Hi, Kitty.
Hello, my name is Kitty Flanagan. I live in Albert Park and I bloody love it. And I just wanted to add my voice to the other dog owners who I know have been requesting that dogs not be completely banned from Port Melbourne beaches during the summer months. I understand that families with small children don't want dogs on the beach during summer when the beaches are crowded, and I totally respect that. I'm not suggesting a free-for-all. Just a compromise, and wondering why Port Melbourne can't come into line with other beaches along the bay that allow dogs between 5:30 and 9:30 a.m. My experience is similar to the earlier speaker, and I've sent in some photographs to support this, that the only people using the beach before 9:30 tend to be exercisers and dog owners. I know that in summer when it's hot, people often use the beach well into the night, which is why I don't expect evening hours to even be on the table, just the morning. I'm not sure what the argument is against allowing dogs on the beach in the early hours of the morning. If it's about picking up after the dogs, I think these restricted hours would limit the use to mostly local dog owners, who I find to be very responsible and very good at policing themselves and others as well. I was told the possibility of leashed dogs on the beach might be considered. However, I would argue it's not practical to suggest that dogs be leashed on the beach area. The appeal of being on the beach is to let the dogs have a much-needed run. And if the beach isn't full of people, then I can't see why that shouldn't be allowed. As a dog owner, I'm more than happy to get off the beach for all of the day and all of the night and leave it dog-free for everyone else to enjoy. We just want that small window, and I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for a small window. After all, everyone pays a premium to live in this beautiful area, and it'd be nice if we were all allowed to utilise what is arguably the area's greatest asset for just a few hours a day. I think one of the nicest things about living here is that we have a tolerant, accepting and intelligent community. So I'm appealing to that tolerance and acceptance and intelligence to see if we can't find a way to compromise and make this work for everybody. Thank you very much for your time, and I apologise if anyone was expecting me to be funny.
And you still were, Kitty. Thank you very much. I call upon Douglas Johnson, speaking to item 10.3, which is also the petition response to the changes for dog restrictions on Port Melbourne beaches. Hi, Douglas.
Hi, thanks very much. I laughed, Kitty, so thank you. So my name's Doug Johnson. I'm a Port Melbourne resident. I've been in the Port Phillip area for about 15 years. I'm like Kitty and many others. I'd be very keen to see a period of time in the morning that we'd be able to access the beach for dogs. I've been fortunate enough all my life to go down to the Surf Coast, down to Torquay, Anglesey and Fairhaven on almost every weekend, and they allow dogs on the beach until 9 a.m. and it works very well. And like Kitty said, the only people on the beach are either those exercising or walking their dogs. So that's really all I've got to say, just to have that balance that we are able to cater for, all members of community, those that want to walk their dogs and those that don't, and be able to do that early in the morning. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you for being short and succinct. Now I call upon Rachel Eves, also speaking to this same item, 10.3, the petition response. Hi, Rachel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I am also supporting access for dog owners before 10 a.m. when nobody else is on the beach. I think it's crazy to have us all crowding on the footpath when there are beautiful empty beaches. Look, I know there's two issues that council are still concerned about here. One, and I'd like to address both of them quickly. One of them, I know they're wondering how many people have supported this petition. In the council notes for 10.3, it actually says that 162 people in 2021, so that's this year, said that they would like less restricted beach access for dog walkers. So it's not just the people that signed the petition, it's also those 162 people as well. So that answers, I hope that answers that question. The other question I know that the council had is on cost. And obviously the costs of community consultation are quite high, but I think that they're too high. And I think that they should be lowered with targeted community consultation. We know at the moment that Port Melbourne, from Kirrip Road to Sandridge, has almost no access to beaches over winter. And so really, if the council is surveying people, please survey the people that are using the beach in the morning, who are probably the exercisers and the local dog walkers. I don't think there's any point in surveying visitors at midday. And I think that will mean that that'll be a very cost-effective way of understanding whether any trial would be useful. And, of course, my beach is, I live in Beacon Cove, my beach is First Point, and as a ratepayer paying $4,500 a year in rates, I would love to be able to use my own beach for winter, for summer, not just for winter. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Kerry McKendrick, also speaking to item 10.3, the petition response. Hi, Kerry.
Hi, thank you, Mayor.
Kerry, if you could state your name and suburb and then take your 2 minutes, please.
Okay. Kerry McKendrick, Port Melbourne, former councillor for the City of Port Melbourne also. And the beach is very topical tonight because St Kilda Beach, all the beaches have been sprayed across all the media and news about the appalling behaviour by some of the visitors to the beach. But I'm speaking tonight in support of allowing access for the dogs on the beaches. So approximately 30 years ago, when Port Melbourne, South Melbourne, St Kilda all joined forces to make what was considered a potential boulevard along our beaches. At that time of the planning, for the beach pathways and the bicycle path, it was never imagined that it would take as much traffic as it does today. Over those 30 years, the population has exploded, and including pet ownership. The use of the paths have also exploded. Not only do you have passive walkers on the path, you have runners, you have people exercising. The path is just impassable most of the time, especially on the weekends in the early mornings. It's also very dangerous for people with wheelchairs and walking aids. The council has taken on approach to build additional bicycle paths at huge expense to City of Port Phillip, but that they have not provided additional resources or funding to allow dog walkers to have access. We have this beautiful wide beach space adjacent to our beach path, which is basically empty, as the previous speakers noted, except for exercises and dog walkers before 10 a.m. in the morning. It seems ridiculous in this modern society that we're not utilising this space. Council's all about utilising open space these days from a multi-use perspective, and council not allowing dogs to have access to these beaches first thing in the morning is just not reasonable. Port Melbourne Beach, the 24/7 dog beach, has now been restricted by the beach bar. I have no issues about the beach bar, but that takes up a large amount of the beach space. But also the yachting club takes up sometimes a half of the beach for their summer sailing period, because you have trailers and you have yachts, which is very scary for the beaches. So I'm speaking tonight in support of getting the beach access until 10 a.m. in the morning. I provided a photo this morning to most of the councillors taken at South Melbourne Life Saving Club at 8 a.m. and the beach was empty. So for those speakers that say they want access, I'm not quite sure when they access the beach, but it's not first thing in the morning, because 2 years ago I actually took photos for approximately a month every morning between around 7:30 a.m. and about 9 o'clock, looking towards Kirrip Road Pier from Lagoon Pier, and each morning the beach was empty. So it's not only people that complain about the beaches, it's the saying they want access on the beach. Allow the people that actually used the beach to utilise our services, which Port Melbourne has been renowned for, or Port Phillip, sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call again on Elizabeth Morrison, speaking to item 10.3, which is the petition response. Hi again, Elizabeth.
Hi.
Hi. If you could state your name and suburb again for the record, and then please speak away.
Thank you. Elizabeth Morrison, Port Melbourne. I walk on the beach sometimes before 6 a.m. and I like to do it without dogs being around. I just like to be in the moment, love the natural beauty, and it's something that is so precious and so important for my well-being. Okay, the petition has a lack of connection between what was asked for and the recommendation. The locations don't match. The petition asked about Port Melbourne and the recommendation is about South Melbourne. The arguments used to justify the recommendations don't relate to the argument used to ask for the petition. The reason for the petition was to prevent foreshore overcrowding on the paths and pressure and green spaces in Port Melbourne. The reason for the recommendation to trial on-leash dog access in South Melbourne includes that existing zonings provide for off-leash access, but not a continuous stretch of beach walking in summer, which could be argued is a more enjoyable experience for walkers and their dogs, and everybody else, I would say. If a continuous stretch of beach walking in summer, is the issue, it needs to be considered for both dog walkers and those who want to walk without dogs. If beach walking in areas adjoining Port Melbourne, including South Melbourne, are considered, a balance needs to be maintained between on and off leash areas, something that the current recommendation fails to achieve. If South Melbourne beach access is changed to on-leash or off-leash, dog walkers can walk all the way from Bay Street to St Kilda. If all other beaches remain off-leash, those who don't want to walk with dogs only have access to one beach. Such a change only further advantages those who already have the most access. The justification includes the value of a continuous stretch of beach walking, but the value of this for those who do not want to walk with dogs goes unrecognised. The same access standard of continuous stretch of beach walking is not applied. Please keep in mind...
Elizabeth, you will have to come to the end again. If you could wrap up, please. Thank you.
Yep. Any comments about restrictions for dogs in summer are in the context of dog prohibited or on leash not being available for 7 months. Anything more than nothing is less restrictive than this. You know, I think it's...
Elizabeth, I'm going to have to wrap you up again. I'm sorry, I've got to limit it to 2 minutes, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
I call upon Nicola Mann, also speaking to item 10.3, which is the petition response. Hi, Nicola.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for hearing me tonight.
If you could state your name and suburb at the beginning and then please take your 2 minutes.
Thank you, thank you. So my name is Nicola Mann and I'm in Port Melbourne. We actually live on Beaconsfield Parade opposite the Port Melbourne Lifesaving Club, and daily throughout the time we're allowed we walk our dog over along the beachway, and it's obviously a great thing to do, and we see a lot of other dog owners and we enjoy the beach on a frequent basis daily, a couple of times through the day. But look, I think the petition to potentially open up walking through summer in the mornings when there's very few other people around, there's certainly walkers and fellow citizens wandering around, but often we definitely, think it would be just a wonderful thing to open up, because the beach should be enjoyed, I think, all year round with having dogs. But obviously, if it was to be opened up to early mornings over summer, it might be a nice compromise for everybody, because most families would potentially go in the afternoon and spend time at the beach at that point then. So we're just a new dog owner as well in the area, and it's just been such a lovely thing to do. And I sort of see in summer, early in the mornings, it would be walkers and dog owners and the like. So, obviously for us, we are now part of the dog community, so we would really very much like to potentially have that happen, and I think that's about all I'd like to say. Everyone we know, the friends in the area that have dogs who also enjoy the beach in the mornings, there seems to be quite a sort of genuine, regular community out there, and I think it would be a lovely way of continuing the dog community and being good canine citizens and good dog ownership, of course, picking up their droppings and doing all the right things that we need to do to make sure that we're not making it uncomfortable for people who don't have dogs or don't particularly like dogs. But I just see it as a fairly simple thing that would be wonderful for our community over summer.
Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you.
I call upon Patricia Goldie, speaking to item 10.3, the petition response. Is that right? I'm just checking.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep, that's right. Sorry, I'm just checking something. Yes, Patricia, you've got 2 minutes, please. If you could state your name and suburb again, please.
Patricia Goldie, Port Melbourne. Option 1, to trial early morning access on leash on South Melbourne Beach, is the worst option, because the petition from 10 people is about access for dogs to beaches in Port Melbourne. South Melbourne Beach is the least suitable beach, Sandwich and St Kilda Pier, to encourage dogs on the beach in peak season, even for dogs on leash. South Melbourne Beach is a human activity beach in peak season all day. I mean, they start in school holidays, public holidays, weekends, the hot days. People come down, they flock down, and they're there well around 9:30, and you can't get a car park for love or money. The activity on South Melbourne Beach starts early. There's little nippers programs, families from other parts of Melbourne, people exercising, and it's busy. You should have seen it yesterday. Some people want to come early and go early. They don't plan to come in the afternoon. They actually want to come early and get away before the heat of day. So I'm pushing for it to be a dog prohibited beach for 24 hours in peak season as it is now. Proper representative consultation has not taken place with the community about such big proposed changes to either South Melbourne Beach or New Beach. And on the basis of a recent commission study by Metropolis, a motion to change South Melbourne Beach was recently rejected at Council for early morning access by dogs. South Melbourne Beach continues to be a dog-prohibited beach during the 5 months of peak season. In the draft DAMP, no action was planned to change any dog regulations on the beaches for dogs in Port Phillip. So what has suddenly changed? Consistency of dog regulations on the beaches is required so that change is not being made constantly without due process and consultation, not just with the dog owners, but with the wider community of beach users.
Patricia, I'm going to have to ask you to just wrap up with one final sentence. I'm sorry.
Okay, I favour option 3 or 4, and I want councillors to find another way to obtain representation from the majority of the public about sharing the public space so that the wider community and the majority of the community without dogs can be heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call upon Tim Norman speaking to item 10.4, which is the Mobile Cctv trailer. Hi, Tim.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Tim, please state your name and suburb for the record and then please take your 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. My name is Tim Norman from Port Melbourne, and yes, I'm speaking on the Mobile Cctv trailer. One would wonder why we need such a thing. My answer is that I've spoken previously on hoon driving as a founding member of the Port Melbourne Road Safety Group. And the first question we would ask is, do we have a problem? My answer to that is yes, emphatically. With the warmer weather and relaxation of COVID restrictions, hoon drivers are appearing in numbers. In the last week alone, there have been 2 cruises, using their terminology, from outer suburbs into Port Phillip, totaling by police estimates around 500 vehicles, both cars and motorcycles. And when these events occur, social media lights up with residential complaints. So we have a hoon problem that isn't going away, and this calls for unusual measures from the city. So why mobile CCTV? Well, our group meets local police regularly, and they've told us that additional equipment will help address the problem. Last summer, they borrowed the mobile unit from Stonington, and it was an immediate success. Mobile units, while seemingly expensive, are cheaper than more police on patrol. So why should the city support this? My answer is that we see limited state action, and we've had discussions on this to address it. But other cities such as Frankston and Dandenong are taking unusual action. And similarly, we believe Port Phillip must step up to protect its residents. Hoon drivers endanger our roads and our residents. They increase costs to the city. So I'll set a challenge as I finish. Challenge to councillors. Tomorrow morning, our group will be speaking to the head of the Road Safety Group of Victoria. And the challenge is, I'd like to tell him, because I know he will ask, what support are you getting from the city? And I'd like to ask councillors to send a sign with unanimous support for this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I now call upon Joe Plummer, speaking to item 12.2, the South Melbourne Market Proposal to close Cecil Street this summer. Hi, Joe.
Hi, thank you. Joe Plummer, South Melbourne. So as you each know, our market traders have endured an incredibly challenging 18 months due to the restrictions and the 6 lockdowns that Melbourne has experienced. And our proposal is to partially close Cecil Street from January through to April to give back to that iconic restaurant strip and also breathe life into the Cecil Street precinct over the warmer months. The market's restaurants will certainly do their part and will invest heavily in, again, looking to explore the dining extensions for outdoor, allowing scores of additional seats, which can also operate up to 7 days a week. The Cecil Street closure will also see the market invest and activate an accessible, free public space for the local community to enjoy. And it will also allow for much needed seating in the area. We'll also host free live music programs to support the local arts industry, along with a series of other free events, collaborations and installations. The space provided or proved certainly in 2021 to be an incredible success, and we are certain that it would be again this year. We believe this proposal will have a broad and deep impact with benefits extending across 3.5 months. And importantly, the market will still hold a version of the Mussel and Jazz Festival event with a celebration of seafood and local jazz musicians, regardless of whether we're able to secure government funding to support the more traditional large-scale Mussel Festival event. The Cecil Street closure budget actually includes money for activation, which we would use for musicians and the like to rove the market. Plus, we would work with our traders to theme dishes and stores and the like to really create that Mussel Festival vibe. But of course, if we're successful in getting the $150,000 from state government, we can then also invest in that bigger event and put money towards the stage, the bar, the activations, and of course the check-in COVID, which are current requirements for us to do so. So we ask councillors to deeply consider with empathy and optimism the market and the precinct recovery, the committee's recommendation to partially close Cecil Street for the 3.5 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo. I now call upon Megs Alston, speaking to item 13.1, Friends of Suai Covalima Annual Report 2020 to 2021. Hi, Megs.
Hi, thank you, Mayor. Megs Alston, South Melbourne. So, thanks for the opportunity to present a few highlights from the annual report. Although the year presented many challenges due to the pandemic, both here and in Timor-Leste, there were remarkable successes. The challenges also gave opportunities, particularly the increased use of technology, which brought us closer to our friends and partners in Suai. They were included in several online events and celebrations that enabled us to share together in ways we had not previously. In Suai, as well as the ongoing programs like scholarships and reforestation, our partner, the Covalima Community Centre, continues to work closely with their municipal government, especially on COVID-related education and prevention. That has been a highlight of their work during the year, and their work to educate far-flung rural communities about the virus, take measures to control its spread and encourage vaccinations is impressive. Following the devastating floods in Timor-Leste in April 2021, the Centre played a vital role in getting emergency relief and food to people in outlying areas. Here we celebrated the 20-year anniversary of the friendship with the launch of a commemorative booklet, another significant book about the friendship published by member Anne Wigglesworth, and a beautiful film, The Art of Friendship, by member Jen Hughes. In between our many lockdowns, we managed to hold a successful fundraising trivia night in April 21. A significant outcome was signing the third 10-year friendship agreement. Former Mayor Councillor Voss signed the agreement in September, and it was signed in Dili by the Vice Minister of State Administration in January 21. This means a great deal to the government of Timor-Leste and, of course, to the people of Suai and the Covalima district. Here, the Community Reference Committee developed and finalised a new strategic plan 2020 to 25, which was endorsed by Council in September last year. I'd like to thank our volunteers, the supporters and donors who continued to give, even though many of our fundraising events were cancelled. Thank you to Council for your formal renewal of the friendship and continuing support. And thank you to the coordinator, Carleen Harlock, whose dedication and thoughtful mentoring and support for the centre enable it and its staff to develop and grow. So I commend the report to Council.
Thank you very much. I call upon Linda Condon, speaking to item 14.1, which is the notice of motion from Councillor Martin regarding climate emergency. Hi, Linda.
Hi, it's Linda Condon and I live in Albert Park. I'd like to speak to the motion of the development of a climate emergency action plan. I support this proposed action by Council, that is, the development of this Climate Emergency Action Plan. Since Council declared a climate emergency in early 2019, we've been urging Council to take the next steps and transition to an actual plan. There is a strong community support for Council taking this step. At a webinar in early 2020, we took a unanimous decision or resolution to Council requesting much stronger action on climate change. But Council's own deliberative panel, an important component of its community consultation for this year's budget, gave highest priority to stronger action in climate change. A more recent webinar in September this year expressed again strong community support for Council to strengthen its response to climate emergency. A YouGov poll in August, the largest ever held in Australia on climate change, showed that 83% of McNamara residents wanted us to see a stronger action on climate change. We're in the last year of Act and Adapt, and since it was adopted in early 2018, the world has changed significantly. In Australia, as we know, the bushfires and floods have emphasised that we're seeing up close the impact of increasing levels of greenhouse gases. We've been told by the International Energy Agency, the IPCC, and the United Nations Environment Programme that this decade to the 2030s is the most critical decade we face. This action plan we're talking about is actually urgent. Our Conservative neighbours, Stonnington, Bayside, Glenara and Kingston, have all adopted these plans recently. Port Phillip needs to join them. And as a member of PCAN, please consider putting some urgent resources behind this proposal for our community's sake. It is, after all, a climate emergency action plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Right on the dot. I call upon Jack Halliday, speaking to the same notice of motion from Councillor Martin, Climate Emergency. Hi, Jack.
Thank you, Mayor. My name's Jack Halliday from Balaclava. PCAN is very pleased that this motion has come to Council and we urge all councillors to support it. Since Council declared a climate emergency in 2019, we've urged through webinars, submissions, presentations to meetings that Council should be taking stronger action. Council's aware of strong community support through the deliberative panel established as part of its budget preparation. Act and Adapt is due to be reviewed in the first part of next year when it will be in place for 4 years. We support an early process to enable Council to move to a stronger and earlier response to the climate situation. Council's in a stronger place than it was in 2017-18 when Act and Adapt was developed. There's better understanding of community emissions and what local government can do. We're a partner in Victoria's first metropolitan community power hub, funded by the state government to make appreciable reductions in community emissions. Enabling access to renewable electricity is not always easy for industrial and commercial users. Council's own history is relevant. From 96-97 to 2018-19, Council's emissions had only fallen from 16,000 to 10,800 tonnes annually, just 1/3 over 12 years. But when it joined the Melbourne Renewable Energy Project, together with other councils, it rapidly achieved net zero emissions, a result we can thank some of the current councillors for. The state government is currently running a community consultation about making similar power purchase agreements available to a wider pool of commercial and industrial companies who don't have market power individually to get better deals from their electricity suppliers. We hope that group buying will be made available to many more Port Phillip companies and the Council can submit to that effect. We commend Councillor's motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I now call on Peter Moratis, speaking to the same notice of motion around climate emergency. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. I'm just speaking through my phone. So, Peter Moray here, St Kilda. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on such an important motion. I join with others, Linda and Jack, who you just heard, to support the motion for Council to put in place an emergency climate action plan. Of course, the plan is not the goal. It's a necessary step towards the goals of Council first, contributing to the communities of Port Phillip, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. That is about Council joining with other municipalities across Australia and the world to play its best part in averting climate catastrophe. Second, taking direct action to enable communities to do all that is possible to adapt to a hotter world, to stronger storms and rising seas. Third, arresting the destruction of other creatures and recreating something like a natural environment in which we and other creatures can coexist. These are all actions acknowledged in the Council current Act and Adapt plan. We see the Climate Emergency Plan building on Act and Adapt through putting in much stronger targets, timelines and accessible reporting on outcomes to the community, which reflect the urgency of the situation. So why is this situation so urgent? Not long ago, it seemed to governments that climate action was a good idea that nevertheless someone else could take up in the future. We now understand that the crisis is upon us. The science tells us annual global emissions reductions of 7% annually starting last year is essential, as is removing greenhouse gas already in the atmosphere. This is necessary if the world is to have a chance of avoiding the doomsday that the Conservative British Prime Minister predicts and pleads against. Local government is closer to citizens than any other tier of government, and so what it does and initiates can be very tangible to people. In fact, through its climate action, it can educate and mobilise people if it recognises education and mobilisation as one of its missions and sees that its actions have two faces.
Peter,
one,
if I could get you to wrap up,
on
please.
Climate. Okay. Just to finish, it's good to see the motion requires the plan to build on Council's extensive previous work. To say the obvious, as a climate emergency plan, it should be a plan that is implemented as soon as is practically possible. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have received some further submissions to be read out on behalf of the members of the public, and that will be read out by the Head of Governance. So I'll read out the name of the Member of Public, and as I've said to the Head of Governance, I may cut you off at the 2-minute mark as well. So this one is from Terence Glenane, also regarding the Domestic Animal Management Plan, which is item 10.1.
Through you, Mayor, and the submission reads, the dog owners group of St Kilda members would like to respond to the draft plan, mainly item 2.2 on page 11. The group represents a social group of approximately 780 dog owners who started in the Peanut Farm Reserve. Our group's concerns are based on the premise that recreation grounds are a precious and limited resource, and that by being shared with all user groups, fully utilise this resource and benefit the community more effectively. These grounds should be promoted to be used and enjoyed as much as possible by the diverse community. We want to ensure that Council continues to support fair access to the facilities and services currently provided for our pets. Dogs and owners are present all days in large numbers, mornings, evenings and during the day. The dog owners group is by far the biggest user group of the Peanut Farm Oval, and group members using the Oval per year consecutively 71,905 man-hours per year, not including other dog walkers, exceed that of sporting clubs using the Oval combined. We have noticed blanket bookings for the Oval by sporting clubs bears little resemblance to their actual use. Members who attended Peanut Farm for years have rarely seen the Oval used by sporting clubs more than 2 days per week. The Peanut Farm has become a brilliant demonstration of a council resource being fully utilised with noticeable community wellbeing benefits. People from near and far often quote the success of the Peanut Farm Oval being used by dog owners and the outwardly positive community spirit. In summary, the Dog Owners Group of St Kilda requests that item 2.2 on page 11 of the draft plan is reworded to the effect that sporting groups have priority of using sporting grounds when the shared use by other groups is impracticable. This would be sporting matches and match training. It doesn't necessarily mean coaching and minor training. This oval sharing system has functioned successfully with consideration, respect and in a cooperative manner between coaches, clubs and dog walkers for years.
If I could I'll finish it there. Thank you very much. Okay, folks, that is the completion of the public question time. So we are now moving on to councillor question times. Are there any questions for the officers? No, let's move on to the sealing schedule, but there are no items for sealing in tonight's agenda. So finally we reach 7, which is petition and joint letters, and we do have one petition on tonight's agenda. I will note that there are a further 2 petition responses in relation to dog restrictions that will be heard within the presentation of reports at items 10.2 and 10.3. So this is item 7.1, the joint letter response, request for attention and improvements for a more sustainable streetscape on Alma Road, St Kilda. Councillors, do we have any questions of the officers in regards to this item? If there are none, do I have a mover for this item or something different?
Madam Mayor, I've got an alternative motion, if that's all right.
All right. Do we need to get that up on the screen, please? And then once it's up, if you could read the additional or changed part.
Sure. Okay, so it's generally just a change to number 4, which is notes that a review and update to the greening Port Phillip strategy is planned for 2022, and the main change is requests that officers consider Alma Road as a priority during this review, sort of bringing it up.
So do I have a seconder for this alternate motion? Councillor Clark. All right, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, first off, thank you to the petitioners for sending this in. I've gone and spoken to some of them and gotten a real sense of, and I've said this before in a meeting, that the lovely neighbourhood vibe and the way that the people there all know each other and catch up with each other, which on a strange main road near an intersection sort of area, is unusual, and so I think it is a very special place, not just because of the community there, but also the cultural offerings and the proximity to all sorts of other wonderful things in our city. So they brought forward a number of different things that they would like us to look at in order to make their little patch of the community, a little neighbourhood, a bit better. And I note that there are a number of actions here that we're either already doing or can easily do to help, which is great. So we can kind of just note that and work with partners or go ahead and do things that we're already doing. There are other actions which we're either not going to do or we can't do, and that's perfectly understandable. But I think one thing that I think we need to do to show our commitment to this little patch here, who have really made it very clear to us that the stress that they've been under, and in terms of the serious disruption and change over the past few years, is that we can review the Alma Road area street trees and just make sure that we can provide the best amenity possible to come back from that disruption. And given that this review is already coming up next year, this amendment is really just to change it so that this is one of the first places we look at and prioritise. For that very reason, there's been a number of major building projects up there, which has been hugely disruptive, and everybody's been lovely about it. Like, no one I've spoken to has been like, oh, I hated it, I wish it had never gone up. They've gone, look, I understand it needs to be built or whatever, but it has been rather disruptive. I think it is time we, our community has put their faith in us. It's time we put some faith back in there that we can work with them to redesign our trees there.
Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Mayor.
I just want to reiterate a bit of what Councillor Baxter has said, and thank you to the community for their passion in their area and putting up a range of different options to how to improve their part of our municipality. Note also that not all of them can be actioned, but they are on officers' agendas, which I think is a great outcome for the residents. And thanks to Councillor Baxter for adding the focus to the review, the greening of Port Phillip, so that the Alma Road section can get a little bit of love, because it is a challenging area in that part of our municipality and it has undergone a lot of change. So I think that's a good outcome, and thank them for putting in the effort to provide us with this petition. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors that wish to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Baxter, do you need to close? No. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. So we're moving on to 8 to 14, which is the presentation of reports. Now, councillors, we do have a long night ahead of us, so I will ask you to be succinct with your comments. Choose wisely. But let's go to item, what have I got? 10.1, which is the Domestic Animal Management Plan for 2022 to 2025. Councillors, we have some officers. Are there any questions that you would like to ask prior to the debate? No questions of the officers? If not, then we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for this or something different? Councillor Copsey to move. Who would like to second? Councillor Martin. Councillor Copsey.
I'll just reserve there.
Councillor Martin.
As a Port Phillip pet owner, and as someone who's been closely involved in the dog debate, I think this document has covered a whole range of areas. I thank our council officers. I thank the community for their consultation. I think we've come to a generally agreed outcome. I'm sure that there will be some fine-tuning further down the track, but yes, I commend the document to you.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the item? I know we have a bit of a theme about dogs and animals. All right. Councillor Copsey to close.
Thanks. I will just speak briefly to say this is a really important topic, especially as we've seen a really big spike in pet ownership through COVID. Our pets have been absolutely inseparable companions, including, making appearances on Zoom meetings. I know I'm not the only one who's experienced that, and it's really important that we have structures and processes in place to support responsible pet ownership in Port Phillip. There are some great changes here that will also support the coexistence of our beloved domestic animals with wildlife, including the introduction of restrictions on cats in the evenings, and that's a big step for our city, so I'm looking forward to seeing that implemented strongly, and I'm glad to see that it's come through into the final document. It's a really great thing to see such engagement with this topic. I know it's one that our community is really passionate about, and so I hope that this new iteration of the domestic animal management policy will support our community to make good choices in terms of taking care of their beloved furry friends. And that's all.
So let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Moving on to item 10.2, which is the petition report, the request for dog restriction changes in Kirrip Park. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officers? No questions? If we don't have that, do I have a mover for this or something different? Councillor Pearl to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Copsey to second. Councillor Pearl. Councillor Copsey.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Do I have any other councillors wishing to speak to the motion? I might briefly just say, just to put on the record, we understand the interest of pet owners, dog owners down there to have a change in the restrictions. But the challenges that we have set is that there is the only open space right down there that a lot of investment came to be in order to get it, and it is sort of attached to the school and the surrounding residents. There are dog parks nearby that we are aware of, and as that end of town grows and we get more open space, perhaps there would be future times to review restrictions, but at the moment we do feel that the park is best utilised as the restrictions are. Councillor Pearl.
Sorry, can I speak?
Oh, I thought didn't have anyone else. Sorry, I thought I was about to... No, Councillor Consolo.
All right. Thank you for the petitioners for bringing this to council. I understand the desire to want to have dogs run in this high-density living. Kirrip Park after 5 p.m. and before 8 a.m. off-leash makes a lot of sense to me. I don't think the any time on the weekends or the public holiday is best for the families and picnic goers, though. The number of the dogs at the moment seems reasonable. However, as the population grows and perhaps the program space for that park increases, like a playground gets installed, it may no longer suit the park, but that could be reviewed in the future. So while I'm supportive of this, I think it's important to point out that in the damp, that was, we've been told that was when to look at some of these things, and that's why it's kind of sectioned in right after the damp vote. But there will be the public open space vote or strategy review coming up in December. So this will be a good opportunity that we can look at a more comprehensive approach to ensure that this area does have access. So maybe that's more around the tram lines closer around Port Melbourne, or looking at the other areas to make sure that the dogs and the owners are looked after as well. Thanks.
I'll just check anyone else before I go to Councillor Pearl. Yes, Councillor Pearl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to the petitioners. It's the third time since the park is open that we've analysed this question, and we still come back with the same results. There's adequate parks in the local area to facilitate dog walking at the moment, and this park was not designed for an open area for off-leash dogs, and it was considered at the time during the design and development phase of the project. So I don't support dogs in this park on an off-leash basis, and I think there's more than enough options. We also need to preserve this environment for the future residents that will move in here in the next 5 or 6 years, and setting a precedent once you let the floodgate open, so to speak, in terms of off-leash dog areas, it's very, very difficult to bring it back. So I don't think it's warranted now. I don't think it's been warranted in the past, and I doubt it'll be warranted in the future.
Right, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you. That motion is carried. Okay, moving on to 10.3, which is the petition report request for changed dog restrictions on Port Melbourne beaches. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officers? Councillor Consolo.
When we speak about the public open space strategy review, the timeline's been listed as December 2021, so next month. Can you maybe tell the public about what we can expect from some timeframes around that?
Am I going to Lisa Davis? Is that Lisa Davis or Anthony?
Through you, Mayor, I might need Kylie Bennett as the General Manager leading that strategy piece to talk to the timelines in the document for the public space strategy.
Through you, Mayor. Officers are currently finalising the public space strategy and engaging with councillors. We are intending to bring a document for council's consideration in December 2021.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Consolo?
So if we did then review, say, dog access across the whole municipality, when would that be following that? Would it be the next financial year? Would it be the 2 years?
Through you, Mayor, one of the things we would need to do once the public space strategy is adopted by Council is to work out a delivery schedule. We would do that in conjunction with my colleague Lisa in terms of working through the work program and other priorities. So I wouldn't at this point in time be able to commit to when that particular piece of work would take place, but certainly councillors in considering the public space strategy could provide officers with some direction around the timing by which you'd like to see that piece of work prioritised.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions for the officers? If not, councillors, we have an officer's recommendation. So do I have a mover for that or something different?
I'd like to move an alternative motion, please.
Yep, Councillor Consolo, could we get that? Is that up on the screen? we're just going with that one.
Can I foreshadow an alternative motion?
Yeah, when we get to your turn, yes, sure. Is it all changed or is it just a portion?
I guess we'll go with what's on the screen. So in 3.3, it's changing from 10 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And that's, yep, I'll explain it later. And then the next page, please. It's adding 3.4, conducts a trial of early morning access for dogs off leash on New Beach, immediately adjacent to Princess Pier and the Groin to the west, Port Melbourne, between the hours of 5:30 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. between 1st of December 2021 and 31st March 2022. Do you want me to read that?
No.
I think it's
no.
The trials are in 3.5, just updating the quantity of trials. 3.6, I'm not sure if that's new, but I'll read it. Notes that a report on the outcomes of the trials and results from the community engagement will be presented to Council in the first half of 2022. And a new one of 3.7 undertakes a review of opportunities for dogs prohibited beach in winter and presents a report to Council early in 2022 on where a trial of a dog's prohibited beach may be undertaken.
Do I have a seconder for this? Councillor Martin to second. Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. Hold on. So the current seasonal approach to the beaches doesn't work. We're speaking more about northwest of Kirrip Road. The petition in particular is for Port Melbourne. Flexibility is needed, and that's not available in this section. There are 2 dog beaches year-round. One's off in the far corner of Garden City, Sandridge Beach, and a much smaller one at the end of Bay Street, which is interesting. In the same week that we've changed now to the summer restrictions, there's a beach bar opening up on this dog beach. So it's going to be it's a pretty large section of it too, so it's going to be even further reduced when the dogs now have been reduced to these 2 sections in our area. I've been contacted by many residents and some visitors. It feels impossible to make everyone happy, but I do think the early morning approach proposed makes it better than it is now, and that 5:30 to 9:30 is consistent with what's available in other areas, such as down Elwood, as well as, I know people have been asking for different times, but some people want an after-school drop-off, so that gives a good 30-minute chunk after 9 a.m. school drop-off. We've also already spoken tonight about the public open space strategy review that will allow for a comprehensive and cost-effective approach to looking at the dog access on our public spaces, including the beaches. The reason for me supporting these trials now is it's not very clear when that's going to happen. So it's great to hear that will happen, but it doesn't say when it's going to happen. And right now with social distancing, we want to be able to let people get off those crowded paths, and people walk their dogs every day. That's part of their routines, and giving them the opportunity in the morning to go on the beaches this summer sounds like a really good idea to me. Different beaches have different needs, so the petition was for Port Melbourne, but the officers have recommended South Melbourne Beach as well. This is a different beach. It's populated with 2 life-saving clubs with many bay swimmers and the beach volleyball nets, so it seems appropriate to have on-leash on this one, and it also addresses people's concerns where they would like to have when they're walking as well, and they don't want dogs that they feel more comfortable with on leash. That's from Lagoon Pier to Kirrip Pier, and it's a nice long stretch for long beach walks. New Beach by Princess Pier does serve a different area. That's Beacon Cove, Garden City, and Fisherman's Bend. There is the year-round dog beach that this adjoins, so it can be a longer length, but the proposal is for off-leash so that the dogs run and enter the water. So this gives that half of the municipality a little bit more flexibility like the rest of the municipality gets to enjoy. The last item is for winter beach access. As much as I support we don't have it right for summer, I don't think we have it right for winter either. If all the beaches are off-leash, it doesn't allow for those who don't want to be around dogs or maybe some children to enjoy the foreshore. I've spoken about my son before. He's been very terrified of dogs, and it's been hard for the 7 months to not be able to find a beach where we're guaranteed there's not going to be a dog. He's growing out of that now and really wants a dog, but I know that there are many like him, and more kids will be born and the cycle will continue. So of the 4 options that we were originally presented, this is 2 of them trialing it this summer, just making it happen because that's what people are wanting. And there's a lot of flexibility that it's not all about the dog owners. It's a compromise in some areas with South Melbourne on leash. And if the third option is doing nothing, we're not achieving anything. And if we wait we don't know when that review is going to happen. So I hope people support this tonight to get these trials going now.
Councillor Martin.
Until I nominated for council, Madam Mayor, I certainly wasn't aware about how controversial the issue of dogs and beaches was, but I can assure you that over the last 12 months I've had so many conversations with so many people, particularly in the Port Melbourne part of Gateway Ward, and there are very strong passions about dogs having more access to beaches, and also some very strong passions about people saying there needs to be areas on the beach where people can access the beach without dogs. And I think the alternative motion that Councillor Consola has come up with tries to address both of those concerns. In my discussions with the Gateway Ward ratepayers, the concerns of many of the Port Melbourne people is that they would like a stretch of beach where they can walk their dogs and without becoming overcrowded. They find the promenade walking down towards South Melbourne is very crowded, and they'd like the opportunity to be able to walk their dogs for at least 1 kilometre or 2, even on leash, without basically falling over each other's feet and having their leads entangled. Hence the suggestion that an on-leash area be implemented between Port Melbourne and South Melbourne. They also believe that there's just not enough space for off-leash areas, and that's why we're looking at trialling a section of the new beach on the other side of Station Pier. We're looking at doing these trials, both of them only for 3 months. There are a whole range of other things that I believe we need to look at, and I'm really pleased to hear that the Open Space Policy Review is going to look at these. The signage, consistency across our beaches, but I believe that this is a first start, and the results of these trials can then be incorporated once the Open Space Policy comes back to the Chamber. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sirikoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to be supporting this motion, and I would also like to foreshadow, in the event that it's fail, an alternative motion. The reasons I won't be supporting it is because when we look more closely at the key points or issues from 4.1 to 4.6 as presented by the council officers in this paper. They've actually presented a very good case with the current plan of how this beach, all the 15 beaches, work along the foreshore from Elwood to Port Melbourne. And it allows zoning so that everybody can enjoy the beaches, whether you have a pet or you don't have a pet, whether you're a visitor or if you're a local. So it provides a safe place for everyone, and it also provides those areas where people can walk their dogs. So I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I'd like to speak to the motion. I hear I know that there has been great advocacy from Councillor Consolo and Councillor Martin, and particularly Councillor Consolo, around looking at where there is opportunity for different kind of dog beaches, and that has been an advocacy that has continued the whole time. And I do think that we might have missed something in the damp in allowing it to get to this point. However, I can't support the motion for the fact that I think we have the option of looking at the big picture, and I think given the rise in ownership of dogs over the last, particularly over lockdown and COVID, I think we actually need to step back and look at the big picture and reassess the entire foreshore and actually the whole open space. Have we got it right? And map it out. I am very keen to perhaps do that as quickly as possible next year as an action. I also think it's a more cost-effective way, rather than spending money on this trial and then having to do a further big picture one, given we haven't really done that big picture lens. So I do apologise to the councillors that we didn't quite get there as part of the damp. But I do think I can't support it yet because I don't think do nothing is an option. I think that we need to do a review given the changing circumstances. However, I just don't think the timing is right to do the trial before we've kind of looked at the big picture. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion or for or against? If not, we'll go. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I've been interested, it's the first time I've gone through this dog issue in our municipality, and it's probably hard to overstate the passion and how many people reach out about this. I went seeking some facts as a starting point for trying to assess this, and was interested to note that there are currently just over 8,000 registered dogs in the community or in the City of Port Phillip, and this represents 6.7% of the resident population. So I was quite surprised for the amount of community contact from around it, that it's a relatively small percentage of our residents who actually own a dog. One of the things that the council does extremely thoroughly, even to my frustration at certain times, is undertake lengthy reviews of policy and engagement with residents. Having just completed this domestic animal management plan review, which covered all areas of dogs and cats, and it's being brought back to council now for us to confirm the policy or make any additional changes. We received a petition a couple of weeks ago that came from 10 people who wanted access dogs times on beaches to be extended during the summer up until 10 a.m. This raised a lot of feedback from the community, which is fair enough, and then morphed into conducting trials on beaches. Now, there are a lot of dog supporters and dog owners, clearly, but there are also many other people who don't support extending dog hours on beaches. So it's a difficult issue to balance up, and there are many competing interests for our beaches. I'm not supportive of this motion or the trials. I believe the council officers have gone through an extensive process. The feedback we received from extensive community consultation did not identify this as a major issue. And as a result of that, I think it feels like we're making policy a bit on the run, and I don't believe there's been the appropriate consultation with the broader community about the trials and about the potential changes to the policy, unlike the domestic animal management plan review had extensive consultation with the community. So for those that don't agree with my position and others, I think, as has been spoken about, there is a open public space review about to commence, and that will take into consideration dog access on beaches and can be done in a consultative and appropriate review of the policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors wishing to speak to the motion? Councillor Pearl.
There's not many issues I'm very undecided on, and this is one of it. I was speaking to my colleague here about my flip-flops in the past 10 minutes about this one. There's an equal argument in my mind for and against this. It doesn't matter because I think the votes are a certain way in any case. But on the positive, I've said publicly I don't think we've got the balance right, much to the dismay of many people who have been calling me in the past 2 weeks saying I've betrayed my position in previous council meetings, which may or may not be true because it's not an issue I've been tremendously passionate about, but I have always thought that the balance wasn't quite right. However, on the negative side, it's a bit of a hodgepodge as is, and the trial I think innately is a good idea, but if the trial isn't signed appropriately, to Councillor Martin's point, it has the effect potentially, particularly over a couple of years, that the goalposts are constantly moving and the goalposts aren't enforced. So if the goalposts move and the laws aren't enforced, my fear is it becomes a bit of a free-for-all for everyone to do sort of what they want for two reasons. Number one, people don't understand what the current rules and regulations are. And number two, they know they're not going to be enforced anyway. So, and to the point around signage, I think the signage that's been proposed here is stickers only, etc. It's not actually... We all want improvements to signage around the foreshore, but it's an incredibly difficult environment to put signage up in, given the weather conditions and the environmental, the sun and all those sorts of things. And they're not particularly effective as is. So I think Yeah, I think being on the fence, I'm going to go on the negative on this one, but please don't take huge offence in that, because I could have easily, as Councillor Clark will say, could have much as easily gone the positive also. But the reason I'm going on the negative on this one is I think we're not lost on opportunities in terms of fixing this problem in the next 6 months. There is a problem, but what I'd like to see is more holistic consistency across the whole city around how we approach the issue.
Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Consola, would you like to close?
Thanks. It's a real shame this costs so much money to do this and has to go through so many hoops to be official, because it just seems like we could say with COVID this is the right choice to do to get people spread out. So I think money is really holding us back on this one when it's more about addressing the time and the now. And the petition for 10 people, there were more. I feel like the system, I've been asking all year for this to be reviewed, and somehow it's played out like this, and it's lucky this petition came up to even get us talking about it, it feels. I'm very thankful that we've also realised that there's this public open space to fall back on, but I think it's been disappointing to see that this is how it had to go. But I really appreciate that the petitioners have brought this up, because living up in Port Melbourne, I know how much this is a passionate topic, and I hope people don't feel let down, because it doesn't look like the vote's going very well here, because I know people really want this, even though that the number of dog people, and we look at the statistics, might say not, but the way with the on-leash, even the people who've been writing opposing it, when you say on-leash them, they're like, oh no, that's fine. So it's not just a general anti-dog, it's just making sure that the dogs are under control, and that's what part of this would be, or limit it to an area that people can be clear that it's dogs off leash. So I hope people will support this more than they've indicated, and thank you.
Okay, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is defeated. So on the back of that, Councillor Kirrip has flagged that she'd like to bring another. What exactly are you bringing?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to recommend an alternative motion. It's the original motion, and we to include option 3 and 4.
If you could read out the change parts, or just indicate what's been crossed out, please.
Yeah, here we are. So option 3 and 4 include report being retain the current dog restrictions on beaches, and include option 4, include an action in the draft public space strategy to undertake a review of all on-beach dog restrictions.
Great. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Beholder, second. Councillor Kirrip, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to thank everybody who's emailed us, and from both sides of this really passionate subject. Everybody's did present fantastic analysis that went on for pages and pages. So people are, as we all know, are very passionate about their dogs. But we've also got a consideration of those people who don't have dogs. We have 7% of the of our community own dogs, and 93% do not own dogs. So in the 2018-19, there was a comprehensive review of all foreshore beaches and St Kilda Botanical Gardens regarding dog restrictions. The purpose of the current zoning of the foreshore beaches is to accommodate residents and visitors who either do or do not own dogs, so that everybody, both young and old, can enjoy sitting, walking, jogging and picnicking on a beach without being troubled by dogs, which are usually not under the effective control of their owners. The number of dog registrations, as already mentioned, has grown from 6,800 to 7,900. But unfortunately, we also have to remember the number of reported dog attacks was close to 90 in the last year. And this does not include those unreported injuries by dogs, where dogs are jumping up and tripping over people because the dogs aren't under proper control. These unwelcome encounters can occur whether or not dogs are on leashes. I myself have witnessed a dog taking down another dog and severely maiming that dog. And this is why we have zoned areas where people can go to a beach area where there are dogs not allowed. For 7 months of the year, dog owners have access to all 15 beaches in Port Phillip, notably over the cooler months of the year. For the remaining 5 months of the year over summer, there are still some beaches for people to walk their dogs in the morning and evening. Like some other beaches in Port Phillip, Port Melbourne has not one but 2 all-year-round dog beaches. The current zoning of some beaches over summer does not allow dogs, so as to allow individuals, families and visitors to enjoy going to the beach any time of the day without worrying about being upset by dogs. We can't also forget over summer where there are other activities such as the life-saving clubs, swimming programs and beach volleyball, where it would not be appropriate for dogs to take part. With COVID restrictions lifting, our beaches over summer will be exploding with residents and visitors, with and without dogs. Yesterday, Melbourne Cup Day, was a testament of how popular our beaches are. So the facts are, less than 7% of residents own dogs. We received a petition of only 10 people who wanted the dog restrictions changed over summer. We have a comprehensive plan which accommodates everybody. And unfortunately, not all dog owners show effective control of their animals. But in this motion, we've also got the public space strategy coming to us over the coming months, which will consider to investigate new and renewed permit times for dogs in open spaces, which includes beaches, and this will involve significant community engagement, and that's the time when we can get great representation from everybody and not just 10 people in a petition to know how they want their beaches to have dog controls. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sirikoff. Councillor Pearl? Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Martin.
I would have much preferred the original motion or the original amendment to be carried. However, this is at least something. If this motion is carried, I urge councillors, I urge the members of the community, I urge our council officers to debate this as fully as possible. We need to hear as many views as possible. My understanding from my council colleagues is that this is an annual discussion that I think Councillor Bond has been going for at least the 9 years that you've been on council. We need to get it right so it doesn't come up on an annual basis. And I think once we do get it right, we need to make sure that it's locked in for some time so that we don't continually have to come back and reopen the debate. I'll certainly personally be advocating for as wide a consultation as possible. I'll be advocating for clear signage. I'll be advocating for the petition of our beaches in such a way that all members of our community get at least some satisfaction out of the results of the public open space strategy consultation. And yes, I'll be voting for this as it's the only way that we'll be able to get our dogs owners a little bit more time on the beach, and we'll also be making sure that our people who aren't so keen to share the beach with dogs are able to get some dog-free time on our beaches as well.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? All right, well, I'll go back to Councillor Sirikoff. Would you like to close?
No. Thank you.
Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Now, councillors, I thought we might take a 5 or so minute break right now, so we'll come back at, let's aim for 8:28. That gives you 8 minutes. All right, see you shortly. Great. All right, thanks everyone. We're back from our little break. So we're moving on to item 10.4, which is the Mobile Cctv trailer. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officers in regard to this report? Councillor Bond.
The cost and timing on purchasing a permanent CCTV, mobile CCTV camera as opposed to leasing one, what's the difference between the two in terms of cost and in terms of timing?
Anthony Trail. Yep.
Through you, Madam Mayor, with the hire arrangement, Council already has a quote where we know we can get that for $35,000 for 6 months, and the lead time of that is approximately 7 to 14 days. So if that is resolved tonight, we would have that available in the month of November. In regards to a purchase, the price is about $120,000. They are made to order, so the purchase arrangement would have to go through a procurement process. So I'd expect a construction timeline, so it could be a 2 to 3 month process before that would arrive for use.
Any other questions to the officers? Councillor Sirikoff.
Can Council also advise whether or not we, depending on how things go, if we can have a hire purchase arrangement?
Anthony Trail.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that can be investigated, but the resolution would have to change because our resolution is recommending hire. The other factor thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Could Council confirm that if we are successful with the grant in December, that we would commence the purchase procurement process, and if we're not, what are the steps that come back to councillors if we're not successful with the grant, please?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, we already have a council resolution where council has resolved to purchase if we were to receive grant application. That's been noted in our resolution tonight. So if we are successful in that grant or any other grant, we would commence that process immediately.
Councillor Bond.
In terms of the monitoring of this video footage, where would that occur? Let's say, for example, this particular piece of apparatus was placed up at Beacon Cove and was monitoring activity in and around Station Pier. How would the police get access to the footage? Would it be a direct live feed? Would it be recorded and reviewed later? What's the setup with the footage here?
Thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor, the Stonington system we borrowed last year is stored on site, but the quote that we have got available within that $35,000 allowance does provide a direct feed and would operate exactly the same as our existing permanent CCTV structures set up on the foreshore or Ackland or Fitzroy Street. So a live feed directly through to the police station.
I might ask a question, if I may, Anthony. So if we were to approve this recommendation for the hire, the $35,000, what would happen then if we were to receive the grant? Would we then just delay purchasing it until after the 6 months, and it would give us appropriate amount of time to tender and things, so it wouldn't be a double up as such, or could it cross over?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if we were to be successful, we would start the procurement process immediately. The CCTV can be used for many purposes throughout, not directly for summer. There's a opportunity for summer, and that's what our community is asking, but we would commence that process immediately.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we've just heard from Councillor Bond's question that that the footage would be beamed in the same way as our fixed CCTV camera footage would be to St Kilda Police Station. That's correct. You're nodding. Yep, good. And would it be subject to the same processes and protocols that Vic Police currently use around retention of footage and destruction of footage and those sorts of things?
Thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor, Resolution 3.8 requires us to amend the MOU to make sure that is exactly how it operates.
Sorry about that, Councillor Baxter.
And can officers confirm that if this motion is passed, it would be in breach of our current CCTV policy?
Anthony?
Yep. Through you, Madam Mayor, the proposal is in two parts. So 3.3, where we recommend that we use the Victorian Government's Safe Outdoor Activation Grant funding. which we will put through to the state government, we think will be accepted. If that is accepted, we would not breach of our policy. If that grant and the government didn't accept that as a reason, this resolution does acknowledge that we would be hiring to outside of our policy.
Councillor Baxter.
So just to clarify, whether or not we breach our own CCTV policy is up to a decision made by somebody else, whether they give us money or not.
Anthony?
Yep. Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct, but we have assessed the COVID grant activation fund and we think that we do qualify for that grant. But your question is correct. If it is determined that's not the case, this resolution does request officers to purchase and hire the CCTV equipment.
Are there any further questions? If not, councillors, we have an officers, Councillor Pearl to move, Councillor Consolo to second. Councillor Pearl.
I'll reserve, if that's okay, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Consolo.
Borrowing Stunnington's unit last year was a great save, but I can see they're using theirs a bit more now, and now's the time that we need to secure our own. This is well supported by our community, so I'll fully support this tonight. I would hope that we would still acquire one long-term via a grant, so that's great to hear that that's still in the background. And it's great that there's a live feed. I wasn't expecting that, so very good.
Councillor Martin.
Can I acknowledge my two Gateway Ward councillors who worked very, very hard with the local Port Melbourne community to try and mitigate the effects of hooning, and it's our belief, after working very closely with our community and after discussion with the police, that this is one of the many measures that we'll need to introduce in order to decrease the amount of antisocial behaviour along our waterfront areas, not just in Port Melbourne but across the municipality. And there are some other issues that we'd like to raise with Council further on. But however, this is a very important first start. So again, thank you to Gateway Ward councillors. Thank you to all those members of the Port Melbourne community who've been working with us, and I think it's going to be a fantastic outcome if this motion is carried.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bond.
I think events of the last fortnight have highlighted that we do have an issue with antisocial behaviour at present in our municipality. A large part of that is the hoon driving and the noisy motorbikes and noisy cars that seem to come down to Port Phillip every time there's a slightly warm day. We seem to be getting it. Most of the role in tackling that sort of activity is the role of the police, and we certainly encourage the police to be very proactive in that area. But there is a role for council to play in this space through the provision of local laws where they're appropriate, but also the provision of infrastructure that enables the police to better undertake their tasks. And one such piece of infrastructure that council has been able to supply police in the past is CCTV across our municipality. Primarily it's been in St Kilda over the last couple of years, but right now there's a problem up in Port Melbourne, and there's this mobile CCTV camera will certainly help us as a council to assist the police in undertaking their role and helping them to address these issues. I've received lots of emails on this, and to address some of the feedback we've provided through these emails is, this is a mobile CCTV camera. It will just watch and observe and record, and primarily for observation and evidence gathering. This is not a speed camera, so it will not be issuing fines to cars that are going above the speed limit, to cars that are hooning, to cars or motorbikes that are excessively loud. It's not going to solve or tackle or do anything in that particular area, but it will provide the police the ability to watch and observe and hopefully respond accordingly and appropriately when they observe something that they believe needs a response, and also provides them with evidence at a later date whereby they need to follow up with court attendances and things like that. These cameras are a very important tool from the evidence side of things, which helps us. It doesn't completely solve the problem we have in our municipality with antisocial behaviour. There's many other steps that need to be taken in that area, but this is one that's where council is doing its bit to assist the police to do their role in this space. So I fully support the hire and hopefully subsequent purchase of a permanent mobile CCTV device, but that can certainly assist the police and help us tackle the hoon driving and the loud motorbikes and the other antisocial behaviour that's currently occurring in Port Phillip.
Councillor Sirikov.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Already this year, Council has received 2 petitions addressing dangerous hoon driving from hoon drivers from Elwood to Port Melbourne along the foreshore and notably at the waterfront. We've also seen the news reports on TV about what's happened in around the BP's petrol station in St Kilda and the havoc that occurred in that area. Hooning is not only happening along the foreshore, but it's also occurring in the back streets, and this behaviour is growing. This is accompanied by burnouts on main roads and also in back streets. Last week and this week, as Councillor Bond has already mentioned, the Port Phillip foreshore has been experiencing more of this this unsocial behaviour. There were a large number of speeding fines and unregistered vehicle notices, plus quite a large number of EP notices for undue smoke and noise violations. So the antisocial behaviour is affecting people in many, many ways, from noise to pollution. And they're basically over it. And they've been contacting us even more so as over the months, and especially on warmer days when we see this antisocial behaviour increasing. So I'm going to support this motion, and in an attempt that we can in some way support the police and to curb hoon driving and bring back some peace and safety to our residents and visitors to Port Phillip.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, a few years ago, Council was put under enormous pressure from a number of different actors to install public space CCTV in a number of areas. Incidents were occurring, and there was significant political pressure, very much up in the lead up to the 2018 state election, and we were forced into this reactive attitude, which ended when we established a council policy on CCTV so that we could actually proactively decide when we would accept funding for CCTV, where it would go, the circumstances under which this would happen. And the development of that policy included wide community consultation, which, importantly, this motion before us does not. During the discussion around the creation of this policy, there were councillors and other people who were declaring very clearly that they were only supporting all of these CCTV demands because the state government was offering funding at the time, and that they would never support spending council money on what is clearly in every sense a state government and Victoria Police responsibility. So, and indeed the motion that we are currently speaking on actually says that to go ahead with this and spend our own money on this would be in contravention of our own policy that we spend quite a lot of time working on and consulting on with our community. So now we're here with a new demand for a permanent mobile this one would be a temporary, but the demand is also for a permanent mobile CCTV facility to monitor our citizens in public places at any time, in any place. So put aside the significant privacy concerns, which I have detailed and which I have significant research on from all over the world associated with this proposal, it is clearly in breach of our council policy for us to pay for such a tool, which would be under the complete control of the police, governed only by an MOU that they have no obligation to stick to whatsoever. And the councillors who declared that they would never support us using council funds to pay for CCTV are now pushing us to do this. The problem with CCTV is that it's not actually an innovative solution. It's the exact same hammer that the police and others want to apply to every nail. No matter the problem in our area, and I acknowledge some of these problems are very serious, right? The hooning or some of the antisocial behaviour that's been going on the beach, these are very serious problems, right? And I'm often accused of somehow downplaying these problems because I don't agree with some people's solution to them. But that's not actually the case. The problems are very, very serious. But for some reason, the only solution that's ever presented to us is always more CCTV and surveillance. Despite the mountains of international and Australia-based evidence to the contrary, the police do not acknowledge the existence of any other solution. They are not interested in investigating them. It's CCTV and council pays for it, or status quo. If you've got a problem, surveillance is always the hammer you need. No justification ever seems to be needed as to why this is the best or only solution. It's simply assumed. CCTV will solve this, and if you're against it, it's because you don't want to solve the problem, not because you think the solution doesn't work, which it doesn't. When these solutions inevitably fail to address the issues that they were rushed through to address, we were assured that they play a part. Expectations are downplayed. Oh, you shouldn't have expected them to solve the problem. I know we told you that this is the only solution to the problem, but you shouldn't have expected to solve the problem. So huge amounts of investment is made into something that doesn't work, and we're told off for daring to expect them to work when they're literally the only solution that are presented to us. I would be much more happy to investigate something like speed cameras or sound-activated cameras, which are very specific to the sorts of circumstances that we've been dealing with and which are not about surveilling public spaces and keeping people under the eye all the time, but simply about managing very specific vehicular-based issues. But we're not looking at that. The only solution that's been given to us is the all-seeing eye must be over you, right? I urge councillors to reject this proposal. If the police wish to obtain new equipment and tools, they should pay for it, not council. This is a serious precedent, and we should be incredibly careful about that. There is nothing in the Local Government Act that says we should be buying police equipment. This is akin to buying weaponry, uniforms, any of the other types of equipment that police use, right? We don't do that, and we shouldn't be doing that. I also urge the police, rather than handballing these issues to local government, to instead work with us, take a positive and proactive approach to solving these issues with us, utilising their resources in a smarter fashion, rather than simply trying to see everything as a nail when all you've got is a hammer. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I wasn't going to speak, but I feel now somewhat compelled. Councillor Baxter, you're right. This is a state government funding. However, we are clearly making all attempts to get another tier of government to pay for this, and so I think that's an admirable response, and hopefully we will be successful. But I think you're letting the perfect get in the way of a solution here. As a new councillor, it's got to be one of the strongest responses I've seen from the community and consistent responses from the community about an issue that concerns them. And I'm lucky I live in a quiet street and don't have to deal with this, but I can assure you, if I had to deal with this amount of noise trying to get some sleep, I would be as irate as the rest of the residents who are constantly engaging, not just the ward councillors, but all the councillors. And I think the community and the residents have a right to expect that they can go to sleep peacefully at night. So in terms of listening to the community, I think this is the only choice we have. And you know what? The solution doesn't have to be innovative, it just has to be effective. And clearly borrowing Stonington's camera has shown that it is an effective solution, and I don't see any other option as councillors representing our community in how we should respond, but positively towards renting and hopefully very shortly buying one. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Copsey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep it brief because Councillor Baxter, I think, spoke very eloquently to some of the concerns that can be raised through this shift by the council. We've canvassed this issue with great length, as Councillor Baxter said in the past, and I think that the issues that he raises around privacy, around the efficacy of this tool are very valid ones. I think that actually in relation to traffic infringements, recorded evidence is one of the areas where it can be effective, but I feel very, very strongly that should the police feel that they require extra equipment, then the state government is the appropriate place for them to gain that. I'm supportive of officers' efforts to seek out grant funding opportunities if this is the direction that we determine to go in responding to these issues. But I'm not supportive of council taking on yet another unfortunate cost shift. And I say that acknowledging that it is really, really unbearable, the noise and the pollution and the safety issues, the road safety issues that are created by hooning behaviour. They're really, really epidemic in our city at the moment, and we do need an effective response to it. What I also worry about with the idea of the camera is that it's set and forget, and actually what I think is going to address this issue is a proactive response from police and EPA. I've seen that there's been vehicle checks being undertaken in the municipality recently, and I think that the attractive part of that is that if you can intercept the vehicles when this behaviour is happening from drivers, then you have that opportunity to get the vehicle when it's actually making the transgression, whether that's a road safety issue, whether that's a vehicle modification issue, or whether that's a noise volume issue. And what we've seen in the past is that one of the difficulties that we've had in responding to this is if people get a notice and are told to bring their vehicle at a later date, then people remodify vehicles so that by the time they show up for the check, there's nothing to pull them up on. So I don't think that this is any substitute for an actual on-the-ground presence. I know that we've had joint EPA and police operations in the past that were successful in intervening with some of this behaviour, and that's the sort of thing that I think I would much rather see pursued. I understand the community desire for a silver bullet to fix this. I remain really unconvinced that this device will be that silver bullet, much as I desire that there was an easy answer to this problem, along with lots of members of the community, I'm sure. And I think it's really a mistake for council to take on what is very squarely a police, EPA and state government responsibility here, though community should rest assured that council has and will continue as a group to advocate very strongly to our local police force that this should be a topic of their focus. And I really thank the police for the effort that they've shown towards this over the last several weeks. I know that they're hearing very regularly from community members, up to 50 calls in a night. So I just think it's not a matter of police knowing whether or not this is happening. It's about responding on the ground when it is. I won't be supporting this tonight, but I do hope that we're successful in those funding applications and wish officers all the best in pursuing those.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I might briefly, if I may, before I return to closing. Look, firstly, I'd like to say, not that anyone will be listening who would be appropriate, don't come to our municipality and behave like hoons and antisocial behaviour. We're not interested. Our foreshore is there to be enjoyed safely, but fairly and equitably by everyone, and that kind of behaviour is just, it's not on. Don't come to our municipality and behave like that. Moving on from that. Look, I don't think any of us think that it's a CCTV, mobile or otherwise, is going to solve the problem. It is part of the solution, and part of the solution is working with the police, state government, and looking at other measures, whether they be social engagement programs for people who looking for something more productive to do other than hooning in their cars. I do think it is... we have been thinking about different solutions all year, and we still have come back to this time and we haven't got anything new. Just to let you know, I did meet with the acting police inspector. Things like sound cameras, unfortunately we checked that. They are new technology in the UK and are not they're not advanced enough to be utilised anywhere else at the moment. The kind of technology that would be for the sound, the one that we were talking about. The police are very aware of the issues and wants to work productively with council in solving this problem and our community. But I think the big thing is this is not so much being driven by police but by our community. They just want the noise to stop. So I will be supporting this. My actual preference is to rent it so that we don't own it and we'll have the maintenance. And I would prefer to renting it as a model going forward, but I am happy to support this and because this recommendation captures all the different options that we have in order to get some mobile CCTV onto our streets and hopefully alleviate or stop the problem. I am looking forward to the electrification of all vehicles, and hopefully this will be a long forgotten problem in the future, but as to where we are at the moment, I will be supporting this motion in order to find some peace and quiet for our residents over these summer months. Councillor Pearl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was thinking the same thing. In 20 years' time, maybe they'll be zipping around, but I'm sure the windows will be down with subwoofers out the windows pumping along, so I'm sure that they like their noise. And having spoken to some of them on Monday night, they're very proud of their vehicles, but also quite keen on the noise that they produce. I was going to call some point of orders because I think there's a lot of factual mistruths that have been put out tonight, and we'll just go through a couple of it. There's no evidence that I've seen that anyone here is saying this is a silver bullet to a problem, or anybody else in our community saying that this is the single thing that's going to solve this problem. Nor have I seen, or officers have seen, any request from police to ask to buy or hire this unit to council. They haven't asked us. Police didn't ask us to do this. We've decided to do this based on the feedback of our community and the experience and evidence that we've been able to gather on the small single experience we have through the gracious generosity of our friends at the City of Stonington that lent us their unit. So this is coming from a grassroots movement of local residents that are deeply concerned about the security in their local area and are asking the state government to respond. The state government had their opportunity to pay for this, and so far they haven't been forthcoming with the funds, which is extraordinarily disappointing and, from my point of view, unfathomable to understand why they're not funding this unit. So it falls upon council to take some form of movement and responsibility to try and give the police the tools that will help them solve what is a very large community problem at the moment. Solutions that have been provided or suggested to council by many people in the community include following the leads of other municipalities by increasing our hooning laws or introducing hooning laws. We're not considering that here today. Other items in terms of permanent road closures or road alterations at certain times of the day. We're not considering those things here today. This is a small step to rent a unit initially. Hopefully we can buy a unit in the future. To give the tool, one single tool to the police officers that we've seen that actually works on one small occasion, but it's worthwhile, a relatively small investment from this council to see if it improves the security in our local areas, which I'm pretty confident it would. Otherwise I wouldn't be supporting the motion here this evening or aggressively supporting it before this meeting here today. So let's not get into a war with Victoria Police. I think Victoria Police are the ones that have actually done a lot, particularly in the last week, and nobody is served by besmirching the fine name of the officers that serve the state of Victoria. On Monday night, there was a good quality operation that showed some good promising results from the Victoria Police, particularly by closing off the Waterfront Place entry and operating a booze bus down the other end towards the end of St Kilda. there's only so much those police officers can do with the resources they have. They need more help. They need more resources. This is one small tool that will hopefully help that process. But there's also a demand problem with this issue at the moment, which hopefully will be abated as night spots open up across Melbourne and summer gets a bit hot. So as summer gets hotter, I'm hoping that the crowd concentration will disperse to other places. But we live on a beautiful foreshore, and it's a very attractive place to be in the evening, and it's becoming a very attractive place for these people. We don't mind people coming to visit our area, but they need to abide by the law. And if people are going to come here and do illegal burnouts and do illegal street races and violate basic common decency around noise laws, we need to do everything within our control to be able to help Victoria Police do their job properly, particularly when the state government won't. So we're left with the awkward position now of following the lead of what we did, I think, in 2016 when the first CCTV cameras were installed or operated. 15, or the switches turned on in 16 perhaps, maybe my memory besmirches me. But we have a long experience with CCTV in this city, and we have good evidence base now to say that how effective or ineffective it may be in certain locations. The benefit of this is it's a mobile unit and the police can deploy it where they need to protect our community and stop initially some of these issues here. So very happy for officers to go off and hire it, and if we do hopefully get some funding from the federal government, which is not their responsibility, or the state government can reconsider their rather puzzling decisions of the past and fund it, we'll have 2 units for a period of time, which might be a fantastic thing also. So councillors, please support the motion here. We've been on a long journey with this. The residents, particularly at my end of town, are very, very keen to get this on the road, and hopefully the police use it appropriately as an effective tool, particularly against hoon driving, but also making our community safer.
All right, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried.
Division required.
Yep. All right, all those in favour? Councillor Bond, Councillor Sirikov, Councillor Consolo, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Martin, Councillor Pearl, Councillor Clark, and all those against, Councillor Baxter, Councillor Copsey. Again, the motion is carried. Okay, moving along to 12.1, which is the Cultural Development Fund, the CDF Project Grant 2021-22 recommendations. So I'm going to remove myself because I have a conflict of interest in part 3.1 of this recommendation. I will ask that this motion be taken in part, and I will remove myself for the first part of the motion being 3.1 and then return for the remaining part of the motion being 3.2 to 3.6. So I ask that the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Pearl, will assume the chair.
No worries. Councillors, we're considering item 12.1, 3.1. Are there any questions for officers on this single point? There being no questions, do I have a mover for this single point, please? Councillor Consolo and Councillor Martin to second. Councillor Consolo, would you like to speak to the item? No. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to the item? Let's put that straight to the vote. Councillors, those in favour? Those against? Motion carried unanimously, and the Mayor may resume the chair.
Nice work. Okay, so we're moving along to items 3.2 to 3.6. Is it just project numbers 3 to 18? So, councillors, do we have any questions on this section? I'm assuming not. Do I have a mover? Councillor Bond, Councillor Consolo to second. Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to the motion? Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Consolo?
I'll just say I read through the list and it looks like some good programming coming up. So it's exciting that we're supporting this, and I hope to go enjoy some.
Councillor Copsey?
It's really exciting to have our Cultural Development Fund, our main arts project funding round, coming to Council tonight. Gosh, it's been a really tough time, and I just think it's going to be fantastic to see these successful applicants bring their projects to life in the city. It will be such an important part of not only our creative industry's recovery, but our city's recovery, because we know that it's projects like these that actually make Port Phillip a wonderful creative place to live. So I'm stoked to see this coming tonight and very happy to endorse the successful applicants and wish them all the best.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I will briefly, as the council delegate on the Cultural Development Fund Committee, can I just firstly say a huge thanks to the officers involved in collating all the work. Sharon and Lauren and Bowen do an amazing job. Also, I do need to give a huge shout out to the members of the panel. As always, even though the arts is my thing, I feel very inferior to the knowledge base and the expertise of the wonderful people on the panel. So to Hanut, Tess, Bree and Hugo, thank you very much for your service in this regard. And you've had a couple of extra rounds to do the endless Smarty grants on, which, as anyone who's done a Smarty grants thing, it is not a quick process. It goes a day of your life. Anyway, there are some really exciting projects, and again, the other thing that blows me away is the constant creativity and innovation within our creative community, what they come up with, what they bring to the table. Even the ones we didn't fund, there's just an amazing array of talent and ideas in our community that blows me away. So I'm very happy to support the ones that I can that will be revealed at a later date. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bond? Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is passed unanimously. Okay, we are on to 12.2, which is the South Melbourne Market Proposal to close Cecil Street this summer. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officers? I had a quick question, if I may, for Danielle Bleasby. How long does it take to close the street off? Is it a couple of days, a week? Like, is it a quick thing to install?
Yeah, Mayor, it takes less than 24 hours. So last year we did it overnight, whilst obviously the streets were quiet, and it was ready by sort of mid-morning the following day.
Sorry, we're a little distracted. We can hear the rain in the town hall, so that must mean it's really heavy outside. Or someone might need to go and check the canal. Are there any other questions for the officers? All right, councillors, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for this or something different? Councillor Copsey to move. Councillor Baxter to second. Councillor Copsey.
I'll reserve, thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. The partial closure that they do for the Muscle Jazz Festival is amazing. I've been there. It's a fantastic time. It's a fantastic communal hub for people to come together and enjoy themselves. So I'm looking forward to doing that again.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Consolo.
It was nice to see this happen last year, and we didn't know we were going to be back in this position of a lockdown again, and here we are. I think this is the right solution to, while we still have these social distancing and restrictions indoors, to also embrace the outdoor eating that is really fun at the market. So I think the same setup or a little bit different this year, and a few more new restaurants will be exciting to have. The also activation just offering to the public, there'll be possibly yoga classes and musicians. It's a good place to hang out as well, and I think we're missing a little bit of that up in that end of the municipality, so it's nice that the market can offer that. So I look forward to this activation. Oh my God. Sorry, the rain's very, very hard here.
I want to just run outside and see how heavy it is, isn't that? Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Pearl.
Yeah, I'll speak if possible. So in the past 2 years alone, we've spent now close to, if this passes tonight, $120,000 on temporarily closing the street. and this strip of street's probably the most expensive strip of street in Port Phillip. The bike path, I don't recall how much it cost, but 10 years ago it was several hundreds of thousands of dollars. The flower pots cost $35,000 4 years ago. We put illuminated street crossing lights on the pedestrian crossings, which cost $85,000 that we disconnected after 3 months because they didn't meet safety requirements and had to be taken down. Now 100, plus the bollards that are going to go in on the corner, and moving the bike path to put the community bus stop there. So in this small little treasure test of a street, we spent a lot of money. The reason I don't support this is $120,000, okay, there is a benefit and an opening up to the markets, businesses along Cecil Street, of which there's 9 to 11, depending on how you calculate it. But predominantly we are providing public open space for private businesses so they can put outdoor dining areas in it. The majority of the time that these are activated is when the market is closed at night time, and there are advantages to that also in terms of outdoor activation. But those businesses should contribute more to the overall cost of ratepayers subsidising the use of what is public space. Now, we've done this in other areas in the municipality in terms of parklets, etc., and I wholeheartedly support that, but not to the tune of effectively subsidising outdoor dining at night time of every night of the week for 4 businesses to the tune of $120,000 in 2 years. I understand there's more public benefit to it. There's the occasional yoga class. There's areas, there'll be a fake grass area where people can eat dim sims, etc. But I don't see this producing the economic outcome, anything commensurate like where the money will potentially come from in another council decision, being the Mussels Festival. My clear presence would be is we use these resources to open up the much delayed project to the food hall to provide a sustainable long-term outdoor dining area, which has been on the cards for some years now and is still bogged down in planning issues, etc., and still hasn't got to construction phase. Or we put this money to where I probably think it should go, which, okay, is a bit of a risk, and we could lose it like a house of cards in some respects. But my gut feeling, it's nothing more than that. I have no evidence to prove this at all, but my gut feeling tells me by the time we get to March or April or even May, we will be in a position to be able to run some form of the Mussel and Jazz Festival that will be able to close that street off, perhaps even close York Street off or Coventry Street, to be able to run an open event which will attract people to the whole market when all 150 odd businesses are open, and be the shining star of what that festival is, and also make sure that we retain our competitive advantage to ensure that the Mussel Festival stays at the South Melbourne Market and it doesn't get pinched by some freeloader that comes from an adjacent council somewhere else. So I foreshadow, if this motion fails this evening, I'll move an alternate motion, which will say something slightly different. But I don't support closing the street based on the reasons I put here before. And if the traders on Cecil Street would like to close the street in the fashion we're talking about it, that's something we should consider. But they should provide more money than just the amount of money to construct their outdoor dining area, so ratepayers get a fair value for effectively privatising what is public space.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bond.
I won't be supporting this either, primarily for a number of retail-based reasons. One of the things about retail is that the moment you impact circulation, whether it's internally or externally, people will find it difficult, they will find it unpleasant to shop in particular areas, and they will go somewhere else where it is a more pleasant shopping experience. And we saw that with the deli aisle when it was full and people couldn't get past the end of that deli aisle. They just turned around and went somewhere else. A few years back, the moment the displays that were blocking the deli aisle were removed, the shops, the other side of that pinch point, their sales went up by 20%. So that's an indication of how many people just said, I'm not going to bother with congestion and walk away. And it applies the same externally to a particular shopping venue. So we start blocking streets in these locations, we start making it hard for vehicles to circulate around the outside on a permanent basis. People will just keep driving, and they'll drive down to Port Melbourne, they'll drive down to the South Melbourne Coles, they'll go somewhere where circulation is not difficult, and that's one of the issues with this, with what we're proposing to do here, is we're making circulation for traffic around that market difficult, and people will go and shop elsewhere. I also think we should be putting a lot more resources into that South Melbourne Market, the Mussel Festival. It's the best event at South Melbourne Market. It's been built up over a number of years. Absolutely fantastic. It's not about selling mussels. It's about promoting the market and creating this perception that the market is a great place to come and shop, and people will come back in following weeks and months. And when you go down and speak to traders, they'll tell you that people said they first came here during the Mussel Festival. They've come back, they enjoyed it, had a great time, so they've come back and they will do their shopping. But we keep putting barriers up at that market, and with the circulation around there, we will turn people away. I'm actually, when Councillor Pearl raised the hostile vehicle blocks that are still there, and that's been many years that we've been looking at that. I haven't seen what's going on there, when they will be replaced with something permanent. That was meant to happen a few years ago, so it'd be wonderful to see that. What's that?
Can we continue on, Councillor Bond?
No. Oh, yes, that's right. The $275,000 traffic survey we spent around there. So yeah, I won't be supporting this because I think we're taking a number of steps in that market which are making it, taking away from the shopping experience there. And it's only little by little, but people will shop elsewhere if you create an unpleasant shopping experience, and I think that's what this does by closing the road. It makes it hard for people to get around, makes it hard for people to get to car parks. It's probably fine for those that walk there, but the vast majority of people drive there, so they're the people we need to look after at this point in time, so I won't be supporting this.
Would any other councillor? Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Councillor Pearl's sort of outlined, I guess, the cost of the proposal, which is somewhat of a concern. However, my main reasons for not supporting this proposal is that the time period is way too long. January to end of April is too long a time period to impact with partial road closure. I agree that the Mussel and Jazz Festival is a good thing, and if we need to look into some temporary closure to support that festival, then potentially I think that's something you could support for that long weekend and that time frame, but not something that goes for 4 months. And I note that, when we look at the feedback, nearly 24% of residents disagreed with the statement that the creation of this space is a positive for traders, residents and visitors. So any time you ad hocly close a road like that, it does massively impact residents, and as far as I'm aware, none of us live there. I'm not sure how we'd appreciate a partial road closure around our area, and it does create impacts trying to get in and out of the market. So I know when the Grand Prix is on, I do not go to the market because I cannot get from my side of town to the market easily without being stuck in a traffic jam forever. So I literally do not go to the market during that period. If we make it hard to get in and out and around that market, which is hugely popular, then we are doing a disservice for that length of time. So for those reasons, I won't be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Martin.
I've listened carefully to the last three speakers, and I think a lot of what they said is quite wise, and there's a lot of information they put out that we need to consider. However, I've also looked at the officer's recommendation. I've looked at the data that they've provided. I know of my own personal experience with the Cecil Street closure, the residents that I've spoken to, the local shopkeepers who are far less opposed to it. I think Councillor Bond talked about, if you like, trialling something in Coventry Street, and he hoped it would work. I'm more confident this would work. I'm not 100% certain. I think if we do it, we need to be very careful with our data and analyse, continue with the survey data that we've got already, repeat that. So at the end of the trial closure, we'll have the data, and we'll have enough data to know whether it's worthwhile doing it again. I think it's worthwhile doing it again as part of our COVID recovery. I'd love to see the Mussel Festival involved with the Cecil Street closure, so that we can bring as much vibrancy back to the South Melbourne market area as possible, I think it's worth doing.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I'll quickly add my 2 cents worth in. I think that we've seen ourselves a lot of evidence and had presentations in the last year around the trends of retail, and a lot of it has to do with experience. It's well beyond just shopping. And people don't go to markets, well, some do, but a lot of the going to markets is much more than going to a supermarket. One, for pricing, but two, it's the experience, it's the atmosphere, it's the shopkeepers or venue keepers, keepers, that's the wrong word, whatever I'm trying to reach for. But it's about the amenity, it's about the experience, it's really local, it has a community feel, and we know that the South Melbourne market is so much more than just somewhere to shop. It's a real community hub. So anything that we can do that enhances that experience of going to the market, that has been shown again and again with placemaking and all these things. If you add something to retail or a place or a park or whatever, people will come. They want more than just going to Coles or Woolies when you go to a market. So there is lots and lots of evidence around the world that these kind of things work. And in fact, we have supported over the last year parklets left, right and centre across our municipality and given over public space to traders to survive without asking them for any extra cost or demanding that it be different for them. Now, there is a bit of a obviously a road closure, but we have looked at that, lane closures, there's been road closures and other things. We're looking at shared zones for future considerations. This is just merely what we have been doing and have been highly satisfied and supportive of, and grateful that the parklets and outdoor activations, thinking differently about our spaces, has worked so well. And I know our community responded very strongly to it. So this is just another one of those. We've trialled it, and it worked, and it was okay. And perhaps, if the person from Elwood that I don't go to the market because it is further to go for me, but perhaps someone closer will shop there instead of perhaps someone from Elwood. There are lots of growing community in Fisherman's Bend, on St Kilda Road, that are right near the markets that can either catch public transport, walk, cycle, whatever it may be. So basically, the evidence around the world shows that these kind of activations add something. And it was done successfully last time, and I think there's an opportunity to do more. And the great thing is there is an application for funding for the Mussel Festival, and dare I mention those words again, pivoting, being agile, being flexible is what it's all about. So the Mussel Festival will still happen in some degree, just not quite perhaps exactly the same as it has previously, but who's to say it can't be better? It'll be different, or it may not be different depending on restrictions. So basically, we get 2 for 1. We close the street, we can still have a fantastic Mussel Festival, hopefully get the funding which allows that to go ahead. And I just think we have celebrated the success of outdoor activation in our city, and we are looking to continue to do it. And the state government is continuing and providing us $1.5 million to continue helping our traders and with outdoor activations and general use of outdoor space. So I think it would be remiss if we did not embrace this opportunity and see what the market can deliver for a small period of time, given the success in our municipality of outdoor activation. Would anyone else like to speak to it, or who moved the motion? I've completely forgotten. Councillor Copsey, would you like to close?
I said, I think it was me. Yes, it was me. Thank you. Just to look, we're a diverse bunch, aren't we? Thank you for the debate tonight, councillors. I'm really pleased to see this proposal come back from the market. I think it's going to do fantastic things for the space over summer. And just to highlight a couple of things in the report in relation to a couple of things that were raised during the debate, there is a contribution. It is envisaged that traders will be contributing to the activation area, similar to the other parklet stuff that's been happening across the municipality. So that is addressed under the financial impact. And around resident response to the initial trial, nothing is going to be perfect and satisfy everyone, but double the number of people agreed that this creation of the space was a positive for traders, residents and visitors than those that disagreed with that statement. So I think that we've seen this work really well previously, this sort of activation. I think I was really pleased to see it come back, given, we're touch wood, coming out of COVID restrictions and going into a new era of living with this virus, but there is still significant uncertainty, particularly around gatherings, and planning for festivals and events is still one of those things that we're working out how to do. Given that uncertainty, I think it's very wise that the Market Committee have come to us with this proposal for something that we know we can effect over summer, and that we know is going to have a positive impact due to the success of the trial last year. So I'm really excited. I think it makes such a pleasant space there for people to sit and dwell, and that's one of the nice things, is rediscovering how great alfresco dining is in our city. I think it's going to create a really positive public seating space there, which I think we don't actually have enough of in the precinct around the market, and I think it's going to be very popular. But equally, the activation possibilities for outdoor entertainment and programming is really exciting. So I thank the Market Committee for being nimble and coming to us with something that we know we can do to positively impact that space. And I also acknowledge that we're going to see the nod to the Mussel Festival no matter what happens. But hopefully, por qué no los dos, we might see, with some successful support, a double bang for our buck in also seeing some form of the Mussel Festival continue next year. I just think this is great because rather than all of that benefit being expended over the one weekend, we're going to get months of benefit for this expenditure. So really, really pleased to support this, and looking forward to seeing the great stuff happen in that space over summer.
Okay, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? So the motion is carried.
May I request a division?
Required.
I was waiting for that. All those in favour? Councillor Baxter, Councillor Consolo, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Martin, Councillor Copsey. All those against? Councillor Bond, Councillor Sirikoff, Councillor Pearl and Councillor Clark. Still carried. Let's move on to 13.1, Friends of Suai Covalima Annual Report 2021. Councillors, are there any questions for our officers? If there are not, do I have a mover for this or something different? Councillor Pearl to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Martin. Councillor Pearl. Councillor Martin.
Madam Mayor, earlier this year I was quite reluctant when it came to voting for additional money for Suai East Timor in our budget, and at the time I think I told the Chamber that my main reason for continuing support for another year was because I was concerned of the effects that this would have at a time of COVID, but that I was not sure how I'd felt about continuing council's funding in previous years. No doubt we'll have to make that decision later, but having read the document, I am just blown away by what the Friends of Suai East Timor have done there. For those of you who haven't read it, and people out there who are listening to this, please go and read it. We've been responsible for some amazing things out there, and I think that no matter what budget decisions we make about Suai East Timor, we need to make sure that we continue supporting them in one form or another. And obviously I've got some soul searching to do as what I do, but yeah, what a fantastic project that this council's been involved with. I'm delighted to be able to support it.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, as Council's delegate to the Friends of Suai, I was very keen to move this motion. I had my hand up first. Sorry. And was a little annoyed. Oops. But no problem. Look, I want to congratulate the Friends of Suai on another fantastic year in terms of mobilising our community and partnering so effectively with Suai Covalima in just a hell of a year for doing anything like that, basically. We've renewed our friendship agreement with Suai Covalima relatively recently, and that work continues on. And basically, this group is able to punch above its weight so much in terms of what it's able to achieve, and even under the immense pressure that we've all been under over the past year. So the Friends of Suai continue to be an important part of our community, an excellent outlet for volunteering and contributions to making our world a better place. So whether that be education, lighting, hygiene, governance advice, reforestation, women's rights, these are all issues that our community actually really holds dear and many are passionate about. These aren't Suai issues, these are Port Phillip issues. And these are issues that actually bind our communities really, really strongly. And that is why our community is so passionate about the Friends of Suai group and so dedicated to the work that they do. I look forward to the continuation of our partnership with Suai Covalima as we modify our delivery plans going forward, and I want to congratulate Megs Alston and all of the members of the Friends of Suai committee and all of the dedicated volunteers for the amazing work they do, as well as our staff member Carleen, who has just been absolutely wonderful. Cheers.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I will briefly. I've been lucky enough to have a little bit to do with the Friends of Suai Covalima through the trivia nights, which is always a fantastic night. But what blows me away most is that group of people, the volunteering and support that they provide for Suai has created community here in Port Phillip. So it's not just about supporting the community over there, but I think there's also huge amounts that this community, people within our community, get from being part of this friendship, whether it be going over there and being part of the democratic process over time, or writing books or films, or the various amazing programs that Carleen, our officer, and Pat before that have helped sort of drive and collaborate on with our friends in Suai. It's just really impressive. So I just want to say hats off to that community for such a long time being so supportive of our friends over there. But the extent of the programs, that such a small amount of funding that we in the city give and that is raised, what they are able to do with it, just you could only hope that if it was reverse situations, that someone would be so generous to help us get up on our feet. And I just, what they're achieving over there, it just blows me away, particularly the one with One Seed reforestation program, where you actually pay farmers to keep trees on, which is one of the key solutions, they say, for getting to net zero is reforestation, which is actually something we need to get better. We do not have a great carbon credit program in this country, and so it's just so impressive what they're doing over there. So again, thank you to Tim for being, or Councillor Baxter for being the delegate for all these years, and thank you so much to the committee and Megs and Carleen and everyone, and I highly commend this report to you. Councillor Pearl, would you like to close? Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Now, councillors, we just need to do a slight amendment. Oh no, there's one more. It's the records, sorry. We're going to 13.2, which is the records of informal meetings of council. You meant the one afterwards, didn't you? All right. Do we have any questions for the officers in regards to this? If not, can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Pearl to move, Councillor Consola to second. I'm assuming there's no debate on this one. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Now we're moving to item 13.3, the financial update, quarterly financial review. Now we need to just amend an officer's amendment to this recommendation. So we're going to remove the trial for the dog restriction changes. And there's another change. And notes that the CCTV will be subject to state government approval of use of funds for this purpose. And I will note, councillors, that we do have two options. When we get to the stage of moving it, you'll need to move to option 1 or 2 in regards to the FOGO, which is either to extend the trial, but to extend and expand. So, councillors, do we have any questions for the officers? Councillor Martin.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to ask the officers, with respect to the extension of the COVID trial, how will we go about selecting the additional sites if we choose option 2? And what will be the messaging to the rest of the community about why these particular sites have been chosen, and so that everyone can feel that the community is winning? Will there be a comms package that would go with that?
So I'm assuming that's not you, Dennis. We'll go with Lachlan Johnson.
Through you, Mayor. The purpose of the communal FOGO trial is to provide a service for residents who don't necessarily have room for an additional food organics and garden organics bin. So officers are recommending, if council decide to adopt option B or option 2, to install additional bins for communal FOGO services at Walter Reserve in Port Melbourne, Clark Reserve in Elwood and Hewison Reserve in East St Kilda. Those sites have been selected because the residents who live around those sites, a lot of the properties are smaller or they're apartment buildings and they're ideally suited to making the most of the communal FOGO service.
Are there any other questions for officers? Oh, not Councillor Carroll. Chris Carroll.
Through you, Mayor, just to further to that response and more specifically to Councillor Martin's questions around what we're saying to others in the community as well, is that we are actually reviewing our Don't Waste It strategy at the moment and looking at options as part of this year's budget process to fast-track implementation of transition to our glass services and our food organics and garden organic services. And a key plank in our strategy is to provide a range of community food organics stations across the municipality. So we're looking to look at how we can fast track that. This would be a key part, an acceleration of that strategy, and we'd be looking to make sure that more people have more access within the next 18 months.
Can I ask a further question, please, Chris? In regards to some of the FOGO, part of it is contractual as well, isn't it, in terms of the renewal of contracts in order to look at expanding and transforming how we've done waste for a long time. They don't come into play, they don't end until 2023, is that correct?
Through you, Mayor, we have some contracts that are coming up that we can choose to extend or renew now, but obviously the process of going through procurement, it's a big procurement, so we need to make sure we get it right. We are looking at looking at those processes now. Part of the issue at the moment is expanding any further under the current short-term arrangements that we've got is quite expensive, and so really when we make a decision around broader FOGO, we need to do that in the context of what we're going to do for the whole city, because that can provide, that economy of scale can provide savings on the current contracts.
Okay, any other questions, councillors? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for this, Councillor Copsey, and a seconder? I'll second. So, Councillor Copsey, you have to choose an option for me.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to move the recommendation with the updates provided by officers so far, and option B, which is to extend and expand the communal food organic trial.
And I'm still happy to second that one. So, Councillor Copsey.
Thank you. So there's a lot in this financial update. We're still obviously grappling with the impacts of a lockdown that went longer than any of us hoped and than we expected when we first settled our budget. But I thank the officers, as usual, for really the team have gone above and beyond over this extremely disrupted period to council's finances and operations, and been so diligent in responding to the changing circumstances that we have found ourselves in, and also in turning around very quickly meaningful action in order to support our community throughout the period of the lockdowns and to stimulate recovery as much as possible. So the update contains some of the updated figures, which are poorer than expected for revenue performance over the period due to the impacts of the lockdown. However, we've seen some things land under and some things not eventuate or be deferred. So this budget update gives a bit of a reckoning of where we are now. And it also includes some further support for community and budget requests to help continue to support the community through impacts such as such as continued waiver and discounts for rent and community licence fees and so on. I'm pleased to see the option in here to extend the community food and organics trial. What I know is that so far there has been incredible community uptake of this, and it's been a very popular service. I'm very conscious that waste is one of those areas in which our costs continue to rise at a unsustainable level due to the probably from a policy perspective, like quite well well understood problem that it's becoming more and more expensive to dispose of waste, particularly to landfills. So what I really like about option B is that it takes us further towards the road of diversion, as well as delivering an expansion of a service that has been desperately wanted by our community, and I'm really pleased that we have an option to do that in the short term rather than pushing off. We're working as quickly as we can on the waste review, but I'd like to see us actually proceed with this in the meantime. We've got also notes around the very welcome COVID-safe outdoor activation fund from the Victorian Government. We've seen that outdoor activations have been one of the things, again, that has been really well embraced by our community. Parklets have proven incredibly popular with traders and with people who are attending, so it's great to see that go forward as well. I don't have anything further to say other than to just thank the officers once again for the really hard work that has gone into keeping up with a very dynamic environment and huge headwinds. I'm pleased that we're still coming through in a relatively sound position. We're actually very blessed as a council to be coming through this with such a resilient community and such hard work from the officers to maintain a sound position for us. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you to the officers for the hard work in this. You know, it is challenging times, which is what we knew at the beginning of the budget, that we didn't quite know what was ahead of us, and I guess that's one of the things about budgets is they wax and wane across a year, and there's always unexpected circumstances or things that come upon us. Look, I am very happy to support all of these measures. I think as landlords we have certain legislative requirements to support various businesses that we are the landlords of in this time, but I'm really happy to support the second option, FOGO, because this is something for our residents. So although we've done a lot of supporting of business, we haven't done as much, well, there hasn't been as direct, I guess, that impacts so many residents. Everyone has FOGO. Everyone has green waste or organic waste, and I know that for a long time, and it's something that councillors all agree on, surprisingly, is that it is a key ask from our community, and we would like to make it happen, obviously more effectively and efficiently across the municipality as fast as we can, but there are things to be worked out. So by expanding and extending this to 2023, we actually allow access across the municipality for everyone to be able to get involved in FOGO. So not only are we saving money by what can go to landfill, we are also getting more trial data. We are also enacting behaviour change, and one of the key things that has been a problem in a highly dense municipality is contamination. I don't know that our recycle bins have got that much better, but I know the contamination so far in the trial with FOGO has been very limited, and I think this is about getting people into that practice. So we need behaviour change along with access. So I think there are so many win-win-wins on this one. Our community is crying out for that. I constantly get berated that we, as a very progressive and sustainably focused council, do not have this. This is a way that we can provide it in the meantime and actually look to solve the problem of many multi-unit dwellings for the future, that this might be the way forward. And this kind of gives us the example. For my building, there's not a lot more space for FOGO. There's a lot of buildings like that. So I'm very happy to support this one. I note that we have removed the dog trial, so there's some money back to help offset some of the $200,000. But if we went out to our community and said, this amount we're using from the surplus in order to provide access across the municipality for organic waste, they will resoundingly say, do it. I also note that we have got some extra money from the state government to help support our businesses and outdoor activations, which again offset some of the costs here. So I urge you, councillors, to support this because it is one of the key issues for people in our municipality. It provides great outcomes for our community for waste, and it is a step forward to transforming the waste, which we need to do. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Looking at the funding initiatives that we've got in here, or the support that we're providing, there's a great cross-section across the community for a number of very good projects. So I'm generally supportive of this. With reference to the food organic trial, as far as I read, it's not FOGO, it's food organic, so food only. And that means our community has come back to us strongly wanting FOGO, which is food and garden organics. This is food only. And the additional cost of $110,000 with continuing the trial as it is to $204,000 to extend it to the other 3 locations. I'm supportive, very supportive of the trials and providing food recycling, if you like, as well as FOGO, as the Mayor notes, and our community is very supportive. However, working in the industry, the continual nature of doing this in a piecemeal way that we are doing by doing trials and then extending it and then adding it, we are adding significant cost to providing these services. So I know this is high on the council officer's agenda, and I know its policy is being brought back to us, but I would strongly encourage we bring a cohesive, complete policy back as soon as we can, because, as I said, this is an expensive way of bringing the services that I know residents want, but I also know residents want us to act in a cost-effective manner. So I'm supportive of what we're trying to achieve. I get that, and it is valuable. I'm particularly supportive because we've got $70,000 that hasn't been spent on the dog trial that we can actually put towards this. But we do need to resolve a holistic policy across the community so we can deliver cost-effective recycling options for the community. But yeah, a good range of policies and support for our community more broadly. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think Councillors Copsey and Crawford, forgot your name for a second, in particular spoke about most of the items here. I'll basically just say that I'm glad that we made sure that we had a good buffer at our budget time to absorb any shocks that COVID would continue to provide us, because it did. I think it was very lucky that I think we really dodged a bullet, and that we didn't cannibalise our budget to just splash money all over the place in terms of rate rebates and stuff like that. We invested in targeted rate relief, and we made sure that we had enough money sitting by so that we can weather any storms and continue to provide support for our community through those storms. So hindsight, it's very easy to speak in hindsight, but I think we made a very good decision back then, and I think it's absolutely justified by the circumstances. With regards to the it's not green bins, it's COFO. That's the new one. And Councillor Clark is absolutely right. So it is communal food organics. It doesn't include garden organics. I am hugely supportive of this, the trial, which is just outrageously popular at the moment. I have a little, caddy bin on my bench, and all my food scraps go into there, excepting certain things that you're not supposed to put in there. And I have to take that up by car to St Kilda West currently to put that in the communal COFO bins there, because I want to be able to dispose of my food organics properly. Extending this to, in particular, the St Kilda East Balaclava area, which has a huge amount of apartments, is I think a really great way of starting to build that behaviour change and condition some of these people into having that option and being able to dispose of their food organics there. I'm not too fussed about the lack of garden organics at these communal food organics in some of these areas, particularly at the Hewison Reserve one, because of the huge amount of apartments there. There's not as many gardens. It's not saying there aren't detached houses with gardens. There are, but the need is not as clear as in some other areas in our municipality, where we definitely do need those garden organics. Provision of green bins, or provision of the ability to get rid of your food organics and garden organics, it has been a massive issue in our community for quite some time. It was a massive issue during the campaign. It was something I committed to during the campaign. I believe other councillors here also did the same thing. So this is a way that we can deliver on that, given, as Councillor Crawford has noted, it's going to be very hard to give everyone a bin, right? There are bin wells that simply are not big enough to take another bin and so on. So some people will need bins. Others will be able to utilise these communal services. And as a regular user for quite some time of this, they're all being used. They had to add extra bins to the St Kilda West one. The only issue that we have is there is a tad of contamination. It's not as bad as it could be, but people, please, plastic bags do not go in those bins. I know that your food scraps can get stinky, but there are ways to manage that don't involve putting it in plastic bags. Please don't do that. I really think that extending this trial, while I acknowledge the cost concerns that Councillor Clark has talked about, we can start now in developing all of our future plans through the data that's gathered, as Councillor Crawford mentioned, and the behaviour change that we're doing now. This will all be setting ourselves the platform by which we can save a lot of money in the future and provide green waste alternatives, which our community has been asking for quite some time.
Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pearl.
It's important to note that the budget settings so early into the financial year are extraordinarily tight, and it was fortuitous that, albeit there was a large amount of spending when the budget was approved, which a number of councillors disagreed with, we went in with I would have liked to have been a higher budget surplus, but we went in with a reasonably high, historically speaking, projected budget surplus, which has been eroded substantially. My basic theory, albeit nobody's crystal ball in this world is as good as anybody else's, but I would think we would hopefully get some stronger tailwinds into Q2 and Q3, and that surplus will revise back up to a higher level than where it's at. But it needs to be said that we need to be extraordinarily cautious, particularly in the next 2 quarters, to make sure we're disciplined on the spending side, based the unpredictability of where this budget's going to end up in the next 6 months compared to previous years. We are extraordinary, having returned to work in the city, we're extraordinarily lucky or fortunate, or however that may be, the way the post-pandemic situation is presented to the council. The City of Melbourne, the city is in all sorts, their businesses is in all sorts, and the council is facing extraordinarily difficult challenges, whereas our council is probably really, frankly, our local economy is probably a net beneficiary in the post-COVID environment, whereas obviously some neighbouring councillors, such as the City of Melbourne, are certainly not in that position. So we're blessed through hard work and good decision-making of the past that our budget position is where it is. But it is very, very thin at the moment, and it's wafer thin, in fact. And we need to be careful in terms of watching the budget position, particularly for the next 2 quarters.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sirikov.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think all the councillors have already said all the great positives of COFO, and I'm in total agreement with it. I think it's fantastic if we can reduce our diversion to landfill by rolling out more COFO bins. And I think what we saw at council meeting, the budget meeting, people were crying out for some form of putting their waste, all their scrap food into bins, where it could go back to being composted and to reduce that waste to landfill. So I think this, while it is expensive, as Councillor Clark pointed out, I think we have to start somewhere to educate the community of the positives of this, and then to get them into a new pattern, a new behaviour of how we've got to deal with the challenges ahead of us and reducing landfill. So I just want to thank the other councillors for all their wise words here, and support this going forward with going from 3 to 6 sites.
Great, thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Copsey.
I'll just close. Thank you, everyone. Everyone said everything, but I thought with all the talk of recovery here, we haven't yet this evening done a plug for getting vaccinated in our community, and so I thought I would just take the time here to say that it's something very meaningful that you can do. If you haven't already been fully vaccinated or are on the road, please hurry and get your second jab. The faster that we all get vaccinated, the faster we can get back to doing the things that we love, the more we can support our local traders, our hospitality, restaurants, importantly our entertainment venues, and we can get back to normal, and that will also help support the recovery of the city, but of all of our community. So thanks very much. Please keep doing the right thing, and let's keep those numbers going up.
So let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Oh no, moved. It was carried unanimously with the late hands up there. All right, moving on. And Councillor Copsey, you may have stolen my thunder at 13.4 to recommend vaccination, but let's do it twice. So we are doing service delivery vaccination policy. So councillors, do we have any questions of our officers in regards to this? I had a quick question, if I may, CEO. So I know that we've just started some of this in regards to our libraries and assist, and where people have to show, like the concierge, like we're all doing when we go to venues. I guess I just wanted to see how it's going in these early days.
Thank you for the question. Madam Mayor, I did speak to both concierges personally today in terms of their experience with asking customers arriving at our assist counter or the library to cite their vaccination, and pleasingly they were saying customers were grateful that we were doing it. They were very respectful and patient, and so I just want to thank the members of the community who turned up today and had to show their vaccination status. So it was very respectful. Interestingly, our concierges have also got material there to help people get their status on their phones. And we're also working through our community wellbeing division with trying to get some classes going for people who are having technical difficulties so that they can actually get their status on the phone. So early days, but just wanted to, I guess, pass on my thanks to those customers who turned up today and were very patient and respectful and very grateful that we were doing that.
That's great news. Any other questions for the officers? If not, we've got an officer's recommendation. Do I have a Councillor Baxter to move? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pearl. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Copsey, I thought this would be where we'd flag it. But it was, why don't we say, we can say it 10 times, and I think that would be totally appropriate. So obviously developing a vaccination policy is incredibly important. We need to be able to, as an organisation, navigate the reality of what we're going to be going into in terms of how we determine people's vaccination status, how we can interact with people who are vaccinated or unvaccinated, how we can continue to provide services to people regardless of their vaccination status, while also keeping everybody safe. This policy, which I thank the officers for their work on doing, provides us with that clarity and that certainty. I think it does a very good job. And I think in particular the focus on making sure that we can continue to assist people who, A, may have the technical difficulties that Mr. Smith was talking about in getting the stuff on their phone, because maybe they are vaxxed, they're just having trouble getting it on their phone, or B, don't have a phone or are flummoxed by our website or something like that, or C, may not be vaccinated because they have an exemption or something like that, or they're too young or whatever it might be, or D, those very few people who will remain unvaccinated by choice, that our council services are universal, and we need to make sure they remain universal while also encouraging as many people as possible to get vaccinated, keep us all safe, keep us all healthy, particularly for that cohort of people who at the moment cannot be vaccinated. I'm talking about my kids and the kids of other councillors and the kids of everybody in this community and the kids of everybody in this country and around the world. These are people who simply cannot make that choice to protect themselves in that way. So we have to protect them, and this policy helps deliver that.
Councillor Pearl?
Yeah, to Councillor Baxter's point, this is the right process to do, right process to follow, and it's just making basic community standards, which I wholeheartedly endorse, and I strongly encourage everybody else to do so. It will require a small amount of effort to become to a new normal, and then the community as a whole will be protected under this policy, and people will be safer because of it. So I highly commend it to you, and thank Councillor Baxter for moving it.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I will. Vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter, would you like to close?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Great, that's the end of the reports, councillors. We have now item 15, which is notices of motions, and we do have one notice of motion tonight, and it's item 14.1, a motion raised by Councillor Martin in relation to the climate emergency. So I think we need to get that up on the screen. We have all seen it before, so before we go to you moving it, Councillor Martin, are there any questions for the officers? No? Okay, Councillor Martin, it's quite a long one to read. Do you want to go to it?
I'll read it off the screen, Mayor. That Council 1 notes the Council resolution on 18th of September 2019 declaring that climate change, including sea level rise and mass species extinction, poses serious risks to the people of Port Phillip and Australia and should be treated as an emergency. 2. Request that the CEO A develops a summary of Council's climate emergency response, including information regarding local climate change impacts, Council and community emissions, actions Council has taken to mitigate and adapt to climate change since September 2019, and a summary of commitments in the Council Plan 2021 and core strategies that are intended to address the climate emergency. B. Makes this summary available on Council's website and presents the summary to Council as part of a monthly CEO report at the earliest opportunity. C. Reviews information on Council's website to ensure that information about Council's climate emergency response is clear and easily accessible to the community. 3. Requests that the CEO A produces a costed proposal and options to develop a 5-year climate emergency action plan for Council to effectively take action on the climate emergency. The purpose of this action plan will be to incorporate targets, goals and strategies from the Council Plan 2021, Council's core strategies including Act and Adapt, Don't Waste It and Move, Connect, Live, as well as science-based targets for a 5-year action plan period. Point 1. The proposal should outline options on information required and possible consultation approaches in addition to any resources required to develop a plan, so this can be consulted on and considered as part of the 2022-23 Council Plan and budget process. Point 4. Notes that Council's Act and Adapt Sustainable Environmental Strategy includes a commitment that it will be reviewed every 4 years and updated if needed, and that this review is due to commence on 20 June 2022. And point 5. Requests that the CEO, as part of the review of the Act and Adapt strategy, considers the following: Council's climate emergency declaration, global and local changes since the adoption of the strategy, including political, legislative, social, environmental and financial changes, current best available information and scientific research to inform actions and targets, and advocacy and partnership opportunities.
Great. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Baxter to second. Councillor Martin.
I'd like to pay tribute to the Older Persons Advisory Committee because it's OPAC that's driven this motion. I sat in on about, I think, 3 successive OPAC meetings where the OPAC people were urging me as their representative on the council to put their views forward, and you may recall that a number of members of the Older Persons Advisory Committee, including the chair, have come and spoken in public question time to put forward their views and ask questions about how council can best move forward in developing a climate emergency action plan. And as you've seen, we're looking at a number of steps. So in the first step, and I have to say, when I ran for council, one of the things that I did say in my, I won't call it a political manifesto, but the little flyer that we could put into the letterbox did say that I was concerned about climate change and what the council would do to, at worst, mitigate and at best to reduce the effects of global warming and other related issues. And at the time, I wasn't quite sure what our council was doing, and I did go to the council website and tried to see what was happening, and I was actually under the impression that we weren't doing a whole lot, and I have to apologise to the councillors from the previous council because over the last 12 months I've learnt that we're doing quite a deal more than I was aware of. But if I, as a council candidate and even as a new councillor, wasn't fully aware of what council was doing, then I'm sure that those people who are just ordinary members of our community have even less idea than what we're doing. So the first thing that this motion's calling on is we're looking for council to produce a document which sets out what we've done over the last 2 years in addressing the climate emergency that council declared back 2 years ago. And that information is available. I think 2 meetings ago I was happy to move that the annual report be accepted, and I commented on some of the things that were included in the annual report, such as the fact that we've reached carbon neutrality. We've done some really good things, but it needs to be documented. So we're looking at producing a document straight away so that our community, we can see as councillors, council officers can be reassured as to what they've done, and our community can see what the City of Port Phillip has done. I've got a copy of Act and Adapt here. I really enjoyed reading Act and Adapt. It doesn't really tell me what we've done so far. It's got some nice milestones, but it doesn't tell us whether we've reached those milestones. This document should pick up on the milestones that are there in Greening Port Phillip, in Act and Adapt, and the other documents that are out there. The next thing that we need to do, though, is to look at what do we need to do as a council in order to develop a climate emergency action plan. And I don't believe that any of us can sit here and say council needs to do this and put a figure on this and say we need to do X, Y and Z. Here it is. So what we're asking is that we as a council authorise our officers to go away and develop a climate emergency action plan strategy as to how we're going to go about developing this, and bring it back to us. And if and when we approve that approach, we can then have it fully costed. It can go into the budget process, and hopefully it would be approved in the 22-23 budget process. If we get the plan right, or if we get the strategy as to how we're going to prepare that plan correct, then I would hope that the whole of the council would endorse a series of outcomes arising out of that, some in the next budget, and then over the next few years gradually implementing many of the recommendations of that climate emergency action plan. So I've waved the Act and Adapt document at you. I don't believe that it's a really good document in terms of showing us exactly what we're doing. It talks in general terms about what we'd like to do, but it doesn't set milestone targets. It doesn't set a number of major targets. And the review of Act and Adapt is probably going to come up before we've got around to developing the Climate Emergency Action Plan, if Council agrees to incorporate that in the next budget. So we've also got included in this motion some recommendations for what we do in the process of reviewing Act and Adapt, so that the review of Act and Adapt can travel hand in glove or hand in hand with the development of the Climate Emergency Action Plan. So we're looking at a number of different stages to the process here. And it may well be, I don't want to second guess what we're doing, it may well be that if Council agrees that we develop this Climate Emergency Action Plan over the course of the next budget, and our community, I'd love to see our community vitally involved in this. I'm sure this is something that the vast majority of our community would love to be involved in. We may be able to pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, we're doing a really, really good job. There aren't a whole lot of new initiatives that we need to build in. There mightn't be very much cost in doing this at all. Or we could say, hey, there are so many things we need to do, or there are so many things we'd like to do, but there are cost imperatives. There are some things we just won't be able to do in the next financial year or even in the next council plan, but at least we'll have the documentation that will allow us to make those decisions. So this is just a very small first step in the long-term process of developing a climate emergency action plan and then the implementation of that plan. And I commend this motion to you.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Martin, for your energy and for bringing this motion to Council. I also want to thank the Older Persons Advisory Committee, as well as the Multicultural Advisory Committee and Multi-Faith Network, who have endorsed OPAC's leadership on pushing Council to take more action in this area. Now, so when I brought the motion to Council a few years ago to declare a climate emergency, we felt the need to very quickly and clearly make a statement to our community about how seriously we would need to take climate change as we go forward. We are in a climate emergency. That's not something that's up for debate. The science is very clear about the future that we're hurtling towards and what the ramifications are for our planet, but also very specifically for our local area when it comes to adverse effects such as sea level rise, flooding, adverse weather effects, heat island effect, and those sorts of things. This climate emergency is already harming our citizens and will harm them even more, and we need to act. Since we made that declaration, which, we had a big fiery debate about at the time and then passed, since then I believe momentum has slowed somewhat, and somewhat understandably so, because we've had a pandemic, and I understand that people have found it difficult to walk and chew gum at the same time. But we have to, because if we thought COVID was an existential threat, then just wait till you see what all of our polluting is going to do to us. Climate change is still the big threat, very specifically to human civilization. It's we're going to be the big losers out of it. At the same time, our community has become more engaged and more willing and demanding to hear from all levels of government what action are going to be taken. They need to know what we're doing to combat and adapt to climate change, and they need to hear us lay out, as so many other councils and other levels of government have done, exactly what we need to do over the next 5 years in this case to deal with this emergency. So we know that our federal government has absolutely failed to do its job in this respect, failed our entire nation and every person in it by failing to take adequate action, and in plenty of cases significantly made the problem worse, due to obviously the millions of dollars in donations they accept from fossil fuel companies and other ways in which they are bought and sold and owned completely by these companies. So we know that we can't rely on the current federal government. The state is doing some things. I don't think they're doing enough, but I would say that. But it really does fall to us to take our future and the future of our kids into our own hands. The emergency is not going to be over in 5 years, but we need to start right now, and again in 5 years' time, and in 10 years' time, and continue until we can ensure a future that avoids the catastrophic warming that we are currently totally on track for. It's not an if, it's a when. Our community have made it abundantly clear that they expect us to act on the climate emergency. Support for action on climate change is wider across our community than almost any other issue. Some of the issues that we have spent hours debating in this chamber, hardly anyone in our community cares about. And yet we don't talk enough about the big issue that is actually really deeply and widely felt by our community. This is our job. Acting on the climate emergency is our job. It's in the Local Government Act. And we've talked about some things tonight that aren't our job. But this is our job. And any councillor that makes the decision not to bother with it is abandoning their community at a time of crisis, which is what we're in right now. So I urge all councillors to vote for action rather than more inaction.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Our previous council voted for a climate emergency, and the council has multiple strategies such as Act and Adapt, Don't Waste It, and many others that are addressing climate change and sustainability that are easily found for residents on the website or hard copies and are within the realm of what council can impact and achieve. The council plan that Councillor Martin is aware of outlines the following areas that council are focused on to achieve meaningful change: climate adaptation, community programs, energy efficiency and emissions reductions, greening programs, electric vehicles, water management and flood mitigation, waste and circular economy, and sustainable development. All of those headings have many actions and require considerable council officer time and to deliver them. The council and the residents are funding these activities to the tune of $20.9 million plus the normal BAU funding. So this is a considerable investment that council is making, and it's targeted on real outcomes for residents of our municipality. And it's a considerable focus for our council. And given all of the actions and the details around the council plan, it's really hard to see the purpose of this motion and how it will deliver any real change in climate change, which should be the focus of this council. Council is always trying to balance the limited funds we have with the many requests for services that we need to deliver. And $20 million plus BAU funding is a good balance, in my opinion. This proposal will unnecessarily divert council officers' time and resources from the current climate change work that they're doing and undertaking, and also add unnecessary cost to the council. Most importantly, you have to ask yourself, what will this motion deliver for residents and the community who every week ask us for more support for sporting ovals, childcare, parks, tree planting, mobile cameras, new footpaths, upgraded playgrounds? And the answer is absolutely nothing. It's just another report costing us more money. It's not going to deliver one additional FOGO bin that we've just gone through how important that is for the community, and we're still not delivering FOGO bins. It's not going to divert any more waste from landfill. It's not going to reduce any more emissions. It's not going to increase tree coverage across the community or mitigate any flooding out of our wood. It's going to deliver nothing. And in fact, it's worse than nothing, because it will distract council officers and waste scarce money that could be used for FOGO bins and tree plantings. So I will not be supporting this meaningless motion that does not deliver anything useful for residents or for climate change. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sirikoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. While this motion, I can see that this motion has good intent, and I do agree that climate change is an issue that we need to address in this council. However, at the same time, I only see that this is only going to end up allocating budget funds to unnecessary report writing instead of practical outcomes. Council must combat climate change in the areas under its control and under its remit, but it must not be wasteful of our limited funds. I am very concerned that this motion will allocate more funds and resources to duplicate the work that the council has already done and is doing, and as we reported in the council's annual report. Under point 2 of the motion, about informing the community in a clear manner about what council is doing to address climate change, this should be business as usual by the council's communications and web team, and does not require any more resources or more report writing. We have limited resources, and we must prioritise our spending not on writing more reports, but on real outcomes by doing what we are already doing. And that includes diversion of waste to landfill, by continuing with and rolling out more of FOGO and community food organic bins across the entire municipality. Residents are calling out for this, as we heard them speak at the recent budget, And tonight we've allocated more money to deliver bins so that we can reduce waste to landfill. We need outcomes and not more spending on consultants and report writing. We need to continue planting more trees in parks and on streets to provide cooling and removal of carbon emissions and also reduce the heat load across the city. We don't need more spending on consultants and report writing. Council has already achieved zero emissions by purchasing renewable electricity and changing our streetlights to LEDs. We need to continue this action and not more spending on consultant and report writing. Council is addressing flood mitigation by identifying and restoring damaged stormwater pipelines with a state-of-the-art camera technology across our city and sharing this valuable information with Melbourne Water. Plus, we are investing $1 million per annum to continue this work. Council is also replacing non-permeable surfaces with permeable surfaces and overhauling our streets with water-sensitive urban gardens. We don't need more spending on consultants and report writing. Council has allowed the trialling of shared electric bikes and more recently approved the trialling of curbside EV recharging stations, which will all add to lowering carbon emissions. Again, we don't need spending on more consultants and report writing. It's so disheartening to see how much money is continually being wasted on report writing. We don't need to employ more staff and consultants to tell us what we already know and what we are planning and what we are already doing. This would be duplicating what Council is already undertaking. It's a misuse of Council's funds to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, possibly, if not more, on hiring more staff and consultants to do more report writing than using these funds to be spent on planting more trees and cultivating more parks, reducing waste to landfill by rolling out more of the food organic bins as soon as possible, and continuing to deliver on flood mitigation. All of these climate change actions are within our remit and we are doing it. This motion is not going to achieve any more than what Council is already doing, and so I won't be supporting this motion.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll briefly speak to it. The fact that we have community and get emails all the time and CRMs around what we're doing in this space indicates to me that we kind of haven't clearly communicated what we are already doing to our community, and it is a high on their priority list. So really I see this motion as putting it into a more succinct, clear way, bringing together all of the different actions under all the different strategies in one spot so we can clearly communicate it straightforward to the community. Probably save a lot of time on council time, officer time, meetings, CRMs, email time. So I think there is a saving in that. So I think it's about communication, and we know that that is often key in any issue. The other thing that I think it can are the opportunity that comes with it, and I'm not a big fan on report writing, but, I'm hesitant to say, but we often have report writing on so many different things. But in this one, I think that possibly a lot has changed since we did act and adapt, and we actually are due to update it. So it's kind of getting a head start on looking, are there any new actions that we might want to consider as part of the budget process next year? And there might be some things that have come on board that other councils are doing, I don't know, that can be captured in this. So it actually gives us more information so we can make better decisions when it comes to budget time, given it is such an important issue for our community and for the long-term, not amenities, safety of our community. So I think getting a head start on any information that can help us make better decisions to protect our community or do an action that might deliver better outcomes sooner. And I think that's the one thing. Like, it's one thing to have a report that sits in a corner and you never adjust, but as we've seen with COVID, when emergencies or things are upon you, you have to be flexible and look. So this is about looking, are there things that we kind of missed in that act and adapt, knowing and where the world has moved to in the last few years, and also given the lack at other levels of government of action, is there more we need to do in this space? So look, My understanding of the motion as it reads is not to be a full report. It's kind of a collating of information to make it more clear for our community. And I do think we need to take our advisory committee's advice or suggestions, take them seriously. I will just point out, I will take umbrage at the use of word misuse. We are elected and it's a democratic choice of how we used to spend the money. It's not misuse. That indicates that there may be underhand use. That belongs in IBAC or ICAC or somewhere else. It is a choice. And our community is clearly telling us that climate change is very top of their agenda and the data supports that. So I am happy to support this that if we can get some new actions, better information for our budget process, but it is a choice that we were elected to make. I hope you support this motion. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. It was put to me before the council meeting that someone called Brenda had written this motion for me and that I was a puppet of a community group. I'm not sure what the name of the group that Brenda belongs to. Someone might like to introduce me to it one day. And that, so that was put to me, and perhaps people are assuming that I'm senile or something like that and I need other people to put ideas into my head. Well, the OPAC, the Older Persons Advisory Committee, they're people who've been putting a lot of pressure on me to bring this motion to council. But I'll give you a little bit of history. My background is science. I've got a degree in chemistry and biochemistry. I've got a degree in statistics. My first few years of teaching, I taught a subject back in the 70s. It wasn't a very popular subject. It was called environmental science. Initially it was called environmental studies, but we changed it to environmental science. And I was teaching greenhouse effects and climate change to Year 12 students more than 40 years ago. So it's not something that Brenda told me yesterday. It's something that I've been passionate about for most of my life. And some people might think it's amusing. It's actually something quite serious to me. I can remember doing experience with my Form 2 students. Most of you don't remember Form 2. It's Year 8 these days. And we would model greenhouse effect. And over a period of days, we'd make our model greenhouses. We'd see the effect of keeping carbon dioxide concentrations in a limited space increase and watch the temperature increase compared to a control space that didn't have an increase in carbon dioxide. I'm going back 45 years, so it's not something that I needed Brenda, whoever Brenda is, to tell me. It's something that I know through my university studies. And perhaps you think that I'm a bit old and I'm not up to date. I don't know what's happened in the last few years. One of my sons was studying meteorology at Monash, and I helped him with a number of his assignments and got right back into things like the albedo effect. For those of you who are into climate change, you'll understand all of these things. So I'm reasonably au fait with the science where it is at the moment. So I rather resent the implication that it takes someone else to tell me what to put motions about. I actually believe in what I'm talking about, and I'm supporting my Older Persons Advisory Committee. I got a text at 6:25 from the chair of the Older Persons Advisory Committee. Hi, Peter. Good luck for tonight. I hope it goes well with the climate motion and can't wait to hear all about it. And so thank you, Frida Ehrlich, for that. And I appreciate the fact that you've pushed me to do this. I was listening to some of the speakers talking about how I'm committing council to wasting council money and perhaps almost acting illegally with the motion that I'm proposing. It's not suggesting that council spend any money at all. I'm assured that council officers are able to complete the tasks that are in here within the current budget. If there is any money to be expended, it would come up as part of the 22-23 budget process. When the 22-23 budget process goes out for consultation, the people of the City of Port Phillip will tell us whether they want us to proceed with this or not. That's democracy. And if the vast majority of the people in the City of Port Phillip don't believe that this is a priority for the council, they'll let us know, and I'm sure we'll have to take their advice. I'm actually getting a tiny bit upset here because I feel I've been personally under attack. You know, my sanity, my reputation, my professionalism has been impugned this evening. And I don't often get this way, but I'm just, as I say, the tiniest bit distressed. And I'm trying to think of a wonderful way to close without being rude to people here, because I'm just, as I say, the tiniest bit upset. Listening to people talk about how this discussion is wasting council money. It was great to hear Councillor Clark list all the wonderful things our council is doing. I wonder if all of our councillors were aware of all of this until Councillor Clark brought us to our attention. Councillor Sirikoff, thank you so much for listing many of the things that we're doing. And I have to say, I didn't know much of this in August last year when I ran for council. I've been very pleasantly surprised that the City of Port Phillip is doing so many good things in the area of addressing climate change. When I put this motion, I didn't say that I wanted to spend millions of dollars doing additional work. I said I wanted to get all the data together so we could see what we are doing, our community can see what we're doing on an issue that, according to all the opinion polls, is the issue that probably is the issue that is greatest concern to most citizens of Australia. And knowing the demographics of Port Phillip, I'd suggest there'd be an even higher proportion of people in the City of Port Phillip who are concerned than across general Australia. And then we'll let the people of Port Phillip have their say in the consultation process on the budget. And if they come back with one voice and they say, Councillor Sirikoff, Councillor Clark, you nailed it. These are the things that we're passionate about. It's all there already. We've got a document that's been prepared at no real cost to council that sets out clearly what we're doing. Our teachers will say, fantastic. We can show our grade 4s, we can show our year 9 students. The OPAC committee members can say, we're all old, but we can die happy in the knowledge that the City of Port Phillip is doing everything it can. Or maybe, just maybe, as a result of the consultation process, people will come back to us and say, yes, we're doing lots of good things in Port Phillip, but we'd like our climate emergency action plan to include some more things. And unless we ask the people of Port Phillip, we won't know. They're the people who elected us. Let's let them tell us whether we're doing a good job or not and whether we need to pull our socks up in this area.
All right, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour?
Can we do that on division, Madam Mayor?
Sure, let's do it. All those in favour? Councillor Baxter, Councillor Consolo, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Copsey, Councillor Martin, and all those against. Councillor Sirikoff, Councillor Pearl and Councillor Clark, and one abstention. Okay, that has passed then. So we are moving on to, and I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet. We will have a break between the end of this and the confidential items. So councillors, when I get my right piece of paper, reports by councillor delegates. Do we have any quick ones? I know I'm harsh. All right, I have an item of urgent business, which is item 17. I'd like to raise an item of urgent business in relation to the Albert Park Secondary College Art Show. Speak to the urgency. So the urgency of, before I obviously move it, it's official, isn't it, Kirsty? Do I speak to it first or do I need to get a mover and a seconder? Just why it's urgent. So the reason I'm bringing this as an urgent motion is, unfortunately, the quick response grants have not been endorsed. The new form that they have taken under the grants review process, they won't be coming to be endorsed to Chambers until December. And the art show, which we have helped support with prize money through our quick response grants over the last few years, and they have replied several months ago, is happening in the 23rd or the 25th of November. So it will be too late and we can't really award the grant afterwards. So it is coming from a funding base that already exists, but the timing of it just doesn't quite line up. So I'm looking for a mover and seconder to support my item of urgent business. Do I have a mover? We've got a mover, Councillor Consolo, and a seconder, Councillor Baxter. Thank you. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour of the item of urgency, thank you. That motion is carried. So, councillors, now we move to the actual item of urgent business. And Kirsty, do I need to read it out to the...
Yes, you do, Mayor.
Okay,
as there's been no previous notice.
Okay, there is actually a typo in there too, which I'm not sure if it's made it to the screen. So the motion is that Council notes the request for $1,000 to support the Albert Park College Art Show in November of 2021, and that funding has previously been provided for this community fundraising event through the now de-established Council Neighbourhood Grants Program. Notes that Albert Park College are unable to apply for a grant through Council's new Quick Response Grant Program, as this will not be formally endorsed by Council until December 2021. There is an extra zero in my copy. And approves a one-off donation of $1,000 to Albert Park College to support the Albert Park College Art Show in 2021 and fund this donation from savings made in the annual community grants budget for 2021-22. I need a seconder for my motion. Councillor Copsey, thank you. I really don't have much more to say. They do a great job. It's a great fundraiser for the buildings, for Albert Park College as the key, one of the main high schools. They do some great art there too, and it is something that we've looked forward to supporting. It would have come to us in the Neighbourhood Grants Program, which is now renamed Quick Response Grant Program, but there was no other method, so I just really urge you to support this. It's a great community cause. The money exists. It's not taking anything that's not budgeted for, and it's just a timing issue. Councillor Copsey.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you've spoken to all the salient points, and I'm happy to support this motion.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Okay, let's just put that to the vote. All those in favour? So that motion was urgent and quick, and it has passed. Thank you. Okay, so councillors, we now have two confidential reports listed on the agenda, being 17.1, the St Kilda Pier Landside Integration, 17.2, the CEO Employment Matters. So I now call on a councillor to move that the meeting be closed to members of the public to consider the two confidential items. Thank you, Councillor Pearl and Councillor Martin to second. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Councillors, we now officially conclude the public part of this meeting. For those watching at home on WebEx or on our socials, I advise members of the public that there are no further open items to be discussed, so that's the conclusion of the meeting. Thank you very much for joining us tonight and for your patience, and please get vaccinated.